I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, July 15th, 2021. We will begin with item 2.1, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, which Wendy will be offering that for us.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a quorum today with Heather, Daryl, Lauren, Forrest, and Andrea, which is participating online. And looking at item 2.3, are there any conflicts of interest from the Planning Commission on any items on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 2.4, which is approval of minutes for the May 6, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from May 6, 2021.
Motion made by Lauren,
I'll second.
second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We will move on to our administrative items at this point. We do have item 3.3, which was withdrawn by the applicant. They're just working on a couple more things before they bring it before us. And then we do have one item 4.1, which is on for a public hearing, but that's a legislative item. But item 3.1 is a request for approval of conditional use for Anthem commercial site plan at 11977 South Harriman Main Street. Clint.
All right, well, good evening. Again, good to be with the commission tonight. And as you stated, this is a conditional use for a site plan at the Anthem commercial development, just in this would be the northeast part of town. The zone is C2, and it's about 1.24 acres. The applicant is Corey Gus with Anthem Retail. And I believe that they're here tonight. Yep. So the site plan that we're looking at tonight, this was part of a subdivision that came before the commission a couple months ago, I believe. The subdivision was approved, it has not been yet recorded. So you'll see two site plans. The site plan that I'll be addressing tonight is on the west side of that subdivision. It's for a 4-tenant building, about 6,500 square feet approximately, as proposed. And from what I can understand from the application, there is one restaurant, 2 retail spaces, and then another area for another use that might come in the future. There's 44 parking spaces, and then it meets the 15% landscaping. They do have a reduced 15-foot setback along Harriman Main Street, where they provided a 2-foot berm. So the issues that we're looking at for consideration tonight are the zoning ordinance and then the Anthem Commercial Master Development Agreement. In terms of engineering, and this is a new approach, and we appreciate the applicant's patience and consideration with this. With some of the previous commercial sites that have come through for consideration, there's been some confusion after they get to the Planning Commission approval. They understand, they think, okay, we're good to go. We're ready to come in and submit building plans. And that's not usually the case. They still have some corrections and some engineering comments that they need to satisfy before they can move on to that building permit portion of the process. So our engineering team has proposed a new approach, and this is the first application that, well, these are the first 2 applications that it's really been taken into consideration of, but it's basically just moving that engineering, the full engineering review from after the Planning Commission approval to before the Planning Commission approval. So as you'll see in this slide and in the report, there's no additional engineering comments or outlying concerns. Everything's been taken care of on that side, and we hope this is a process that will be beneficial to the applicant as well as the commission as we move forward with this approach. So, sorry, my clicker's not working. Okay, there we go. Okay. So in terms of consideration for conditional use, on the left side of the slide here are all the things we're looking at: suitability, harmony with surrounding development, effects on surrounding development, the economic and aesthetic impacts, service issues, mitigating odors, and then the well-being of the city. With this building, this 4-tenant building is in a commercial area. It's a master planned area that has taken most of these things into consideration. Obviously, the economic impact would be beneficial to the city, where we'll have buildings going up on property, which will increase the tax base as well as provide additional jobs and sales tax revenue. Aesthetically, it matches the other buildings that are in the project. Service issues, all the utilities and roads are already in place. These would just be connecting to those, and so there's not a whole lot of concerns in terms of the conditional use aspect of it. Where those about, like, it really helps that it's taken place in a master plan development. In terms of the architecture of the building, it has received ARC approval from the Anthem Commercial Group, as you can see the letter here. And again, this building is very similar to other tenant buildings in the Anthem commercial development. The one condition of correction that we would point out tonight to the commission is just dealing with the dumpster enclosure. And this is something that's very common. It's a detail that's maybe overlooked, but city ordinance does require that the materials and the colors match. In this aspect, they're only proposing that the material or that the colors match, and not necessarily the color or the materials. So we're recommending that both the materials and the colors match the building that's going to be constructed on site. And again, the subdivision was approved by the Planning Commission in June, and we would recommend that a building permit for this building not be issued until the subdivision is recorded. So with those two recommended conditions, we do feel that this proposal is compliant with the Anthem Commercial MDA and with the zoning ordinance, and we recommend approval with these 3 conditions. Are there any questions or concerns for me?
I only have one question, but it might be for the applicant. Based on the building outline, is there 1 or 2 drive-through windows that I saw?
So there's designed to be 2 drive-through windows.
And I guess I just want to understand the traffic flow after I've seen what's happening just north of them with the 2 drive-throughs of the 2 buildings next to them, where they're actually driving into the other person's drive-through. And so I'm curious how the flow is going to work. That's the only question I have on this.
And the applicant might be able to address that issue a little bit better.
Yep, we'll have them answer that one then.
They do meet the stacking, issues from the city, though.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Clint. If the applicant's present, we'll let him come up, and then if you want to just state your name.
Good evening. Corey Gust, and I'm representing the Anthem Group.
Awesome.
I think Clinton did a good job of describing the new process that we've been through, and it's actually, I think, going to be very helpful because we've got all the issues worked out up front rather than after we have this meeting, and so we're the guinea pig, but I think it's turning out well.
Good. Only question I had was with the 2 drive-through windows, the traffic flow on it, and I don't know if we have an aerial view where we could see a little bit better.
I mean, as you're probably aware with
And this is only stemming from just north of you guys past the Winco. There's been some issues with the drive-throughs that literally want.
on which one?
It's the JCW and the cookie place. They literally have the cookie place's drive-through drives into the drive-through of the other one.
Yeah, and
with
we
how it's been a little
we weren't
messy.
involved in the design on those ones.
Yeah. So I'm just curious how it's laid out.
So one of the new things that the city has required going back to when we did the Ziggy's approval is you now require a traffic engineer to evaluate the drive-through lanes. and how they flow. So we do have a full traffic report that we did for this. But if you look at this, there's a ton of stacking for both of these. And one of the tenants is going to be La Fountain, which is a Mexican restaurant. And so what they're going to have is just where you call in your order or you order it online, and then you come through and pick it up at the window. You won't be ordering at the kiosk. And then the second one is going to be for Robintino's Pizza, and they'll have a kiosk on the other lane. So when you get to the end of the lanes, they just cross.
So they cross each other?
Yeah.
So kiosk meaning they'll just pick up the pizzas in that little,
Well, where you order.
okay.
So they'll have online ordering as well as where you can order off. They have pre-made pizza where you'll be able to pick it up at the window. But if you have an order like a full pizza, then you'll have to pick it up inside the store. So they'll have pre-made.
Oh, I see.
so
So
how-
the one window's before.
Yeah.
So they'll pick up here and then you just drive it across.
And then the other one drives around and crosses over it.
So there'll be signage to indicate don't
Yeah, it'll have
block
all the
that
signage and
intersection or whatever.
it'll all be marked on the curbs. And
keep clear, okay.
with COVID, as you can imagine, everybody wants a drive-through window now. And
Yep.
so, or an option for food users to pick up with their food. So we've developed this concept where we could have 2 drive-through windows.
Yeah, this is a little new with the design and everything.
Yeah, it's the
And
first
so-
time we've done this design.
Yeah,
But we think it's gonna work out well because all you're doing is crossing the lane. So we'll have stop signs where, you know, you can't like block the lane.
okay. All right, that was my only question because I know north of you guys, they've had a little bit of
Also
problems
on
with
this
that.
building, we've done some, along Main Street, we did some more architectural features on the building so that you're not just looking like at the back of a building with a bunch of doors. We put a bunch of architectural features on the back, so, because it's facing Main Street, we wanted to look nice against Main Street.
That was one of my concerns, so I appreciate that. I think
And we
that's a-
also, I don't know if the dentist is. The second application is with Alan Borg, who's the dentist. He's on this other parcel right here that you can see in the corner. And they're buying the parcel from Anthem, but there will be conjunction in developing it together. But one of the nice things about having the dentist there, you know, his office hours are, he's closed by 5:30. So at nighttime, we'll have all the parking with the whole
Parking will work better that way.
That'd be
area
great.
free. And there shouldn't be any problems with, you know, cars backing up out of the drive-through or anything like that, because we got a lot of stacking to start with, but tons of parking.
All right, any other
Since
questions?
Alan's not here tonight, you may want to ask me anything on that second application. I can maybe, if you have any questions.
I think I'm good. Any other questions from anyone on the planning commission for the applicant?
Not right now.
All right, thank you. I think you can sit down.
Thank you.
Now, with that being said, any further discussion from the planning commission? Or are we ready to make a motion?
I still am a little bit concerned. Like you said, I think they've addressed it a little bit, but are we gonna get, I know, like where Salt City Sweet Shop is, I know it's hurt that strip of businesses because their back is to the main. Not quite the same setup. I'm just trying to think if,
I think this one will be a little different with you got the Winco and a lot of the other commercial that's based in here versus the other one that doesn't have any.
doesn't face any of the commercial. Yeah, and that's really what's hurt them too.
Yeah.
You're right.
And I know signage usually comes back, but is there signs on the back of this, Michael or Clint? Are they planning on having signs on the back of this building? I know that usually comes back to us if it's anything different.
Yeah,
Yeah, I assume there would be.
yeah, they're allowed to have those on the,
Yeah.
on that side.
Yeah,
I'm good then.
all right. Looking to the planning commission to make a motion at this time then.
I'll make a motion to approve item 3.1 with staff's 3 recommendations.
Motion made by Heather
Second.
and a second by Forrest. And then we'll call for a vote. Heather,
Yes.
Daryl,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
and Andrea. Are you online? There you go. We can. Thank you. I just want to make sure I hadn't heard you talk yet, so I didn't double check you were there. So that's approved, and thank you so much, Corey. We'll move on to item 3.2, which is a request for approval of conditional use for Borg Dental Office in the Anthem commercial, which is next door, it sounds like.
Yeah, this is going to sound really familiar because it's right just right next door, right to the west, I believe. So yeah, I was just going to go over the approval of conditional use for the Anthem commercial site plan at 11976 South Carlsbad Way. It's also in the C2 zone. It's about a little over half an acre. It's kind of a vicinity map to show, just give you some perspective. So let's see. So Clint was just talking about this parcel. I guess you can't see my finger. So I'm going to be talking about this parcel right here, right to the west of it. As you can see, Winco, just kind of give you an idea of where it's at. So as I mentioned, it's about a little over half an acre, and the applicant's proposing a 3,355 square foot building. There'll be 2 dental offices in that building. The parking requirement for that is 6 parking stalls per dental office, so the 21 meets that requirement. With the bicycle parking, your packet probably says something different. As I looked through the plan again, I actually found the bicycle parking, so they do have that on their plan, which is great. It's number 20, if you can see that kind of in the south, towards the south of the building. They meet the landscaping requirement. 15% is required, and they have about 23%. This street right here, Carlsbad Way, is a private street, so technically these street trees are not required, but they're putting them in anyway, so that'll look really nice. And with the elevations, it's very similar to the other building as well. White brick and brown stucco, and they'd have a letter as well from the ARC approval to meet those requirements. This had a similar issue with the dumpster. It needs to match the materials and colors of the main building. So that'll be a recommendation that we would recommend. As Clint mentioned before, this plat has been approved but not recorded. So that is also a recommendation that be recorded before a building permit is granted. So we recommend the approval of the conditional use and site plan for Borg Dental with the following conditions, which I outlined with the dumpster and the building permit issued. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from the Planning Commission?
Not right now.
Yeah, I believe the applicant said that, but we'll let him come up and answer that in a question just to confirm it. Thank you. And if you want to just state your name again for the record.
Corey Gust with the Anthem Group. Back in January, they approached us on buying a parcel at the Anthem to do the dental, and that's what triggered this other building in that same area, so we could build them together and not have a big construction mess with one and the other like following behind. But what was your question?
So Andrea's question was, is the actual dental office going to be the owner of this building?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, Andrea?
Representative. At Anthem Center maintains all the properties so that they're in good condition, and they have to then, pay their CAM into us in order, we could just control their landscape. We don't control anything else, but we make sure that everything's mowed on the same day, weeded, and that's a condition of the purchase agreement. So we don't have guys mowing the lawn on Thursday and another guy on Monday and that stuff. So it looks good.
Are there reciprocal easements in place to cover snow plowing and shared parking?
Yeah, there's cross easement agreements in place. That was done with when we did the Winco agreement. So we have cross easements across the whole
property has
the
crossing.
whole center, the project.
All right, any other questions for the applicant on this one? You brought us
Also,
two pretty
just
simple ones.
Also to note, you know, we're making sure we're doing the sidewalk connectivity, and so that we're doing it a little different than normally you do, but where we connect the sidewalk to go from one building to the next building. So we're trying to promote people to walk in front of the businesses and instead of around the perimeter of the project. We have a perimeter sidewalk, but we're trying to connect them all. So you can walk by the businesses and hopefully.
It's what we want to see.
Hopefully buy something.
Yep.
I think it's great.
Thanks.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Then at this time, looking at the planning commission for additional discussion or a motion to be made.
I'm ready to make a motion. Make a motion to approve item 3.2, approval of conditional use for board dental office with staff's 3 recommendations.
Thank you, Lauren.
I'll second it.
Second by Daryl. And then we'll call for a vote. Heather?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
Andrea? Thank you so much. Thank you, Corey. Have a good night. Item 3.3 was withdrawn from the agenda today. So we'll move on to legislative items, which is item 4.1, which is a recommendation of approval to adopt the draft general plan. This is on for a public hearing, and looks like Micah will be presenting this to begin.
I'm just going to introduce our consultant again for our commission and those members of the public who are here or tuning in. We all know that it has been a long time in coming to this point in our general plan update. We've had some setbacks, a pandemic, a change in our consultants firm. But we have, through all of that, been listening to the members of the public. We've had a lot of engagement. It doesn't feel perhaps like it because it's been stretched out over a period of time. But when you look at the individual points of contact and all of the public outreach events that we did prior to the pandemic hitting, our consultant and our staff has really put in a lot of effort to hear the community. We will also be hearing this item again before the City Council. That's an extra step that is not required by the state code, but we've been stating that throughout this whole process, that we will have a public hearing tonight before the Planning Commission, and then following any recommendation that you may have on this plan for the City Council, we will have another public hearing before the City Council. And primarily that's because we know that just like you as a body, as a recommending body, you will have recommendations and opinions and further amendments that you will have. We know the council will want to do the same, and we want to make sure that the public has an opportunity to weigh in on any of those amendments that the council may consider important to this proposal. So having said that, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to our consultant, Susan Pethram from FFKR. She has, I believe, a brief presentation she'd like to make before the public hearing tonight. And then any comments or questions you have for our consultant on the general plan, she'll be ready to listen.
Great. I think we're ready to go. Good evening. I'm glad we have the opportunity to do this in person. We just have a brief presentation to give an overview of the final draft plan, and we'll talk a little bit about the plan process. Michael gave a little bit of an intro on that, and then the plan structure in its current form. So Harriman Voices, the plan process, how did we get to where we are today? It was really, as Michael mentioned, a detailed process. We kicked off late spring of 2019, started engaging with the public at a lot of those city events, going out to Harriman Town Days, the Memorial Day breakfast, being out at the food truck roundup, just trying to get a range of input at different events in different places. Starting that summer is when we also started meeting with the Planning Commission and City Council pretty regularly. So you can see that that engagement really, anchored the beginning of the process. In the 2020 process is when we came back to you as a group to work through creating the body of the general plan and refining it to where we are today. Circled back out to the community. We did a series of events in April, reaching out at 4 different locations, doing 2 different online events, and also working with you to create some great informative videos to post on the city's website. So here we are today in July, and we are starting that approval process coming at the end of the engagement and create and refine. So just a quick outreach recap. Michael mentioned a little bit of the varied approaches that we've taken, and this is just a capture from the draft plan showing that we had 2 statistically valid surveys that we did at different points in time during the outreach. We worked with USU doing some research on community well-being. They were able to do 2 different surveys during the general plan process, which has informed some of the direction of the plan. We were at least at 11 different locations during our outreach, if not more, and had at least 23 or more different opportunities for people to provide some input on the plan. We feel like in total we probably reached 3,200 or more people through the surveys, the events, just being online. So really, a great broad reach of people and representation, and those opinions, whether it was a comment or a dot on a map or a survey answer, probably a total of 27,000 or more different opinions have led to where we are with the general plan. So capturing all of those voices, whether it was the community or working with you, we identified values and priorities, and those are the things that really framed the direction that we took with the draft general plan. The things that Harriman values: the beautiful open spaces, the opportunity for active lifestyles, having exceptional access to the outdoors, diverse recreation opportunities, and the spectacular views, whether you're looking up to the foothills or looking down from the foothills out to the city and the valley. The priorities that were identified during the process, there were 6 of them. We discovered that Harriman prioritizes bringing in economic development opportunities, preserving and enhancing the community character, providing for community amenities, providing safe transportation choices, facilitating employment opportunities, and supporting a mix of housing types and maintaining that mix of housing types. So that led to the plan structure and where we are today. The plan structure starts off with vision and key initiatives, capturing those values and priorities, and leading to some vision statements, but also 4 key initiatives that provide an overarching framework for the plan and the things that are sort of a guiding direction for making decisions moving forward. A new element to the plan since the last draft is a policy guide that's structured around those 6 priorities that were identified with some aims and goal statements, as well as some policies and strategies associated with each of those 6. You'll see a lot of crossover in some of the language, just showing the integrated nature of those priorities and the general plan. The action plan is a series of action items that are follow-up steps or projects for the city to take, whether it's developing some new standards, implementing some new ordinance language, or developing some programs, or sort of shifting the process with the decision-making process the city has regarding land use and development. The final chapter is that future land use and development tool It's the new categories that are very descriptive with some visual aids telling you a little bit more information about what the vision is for each of those land use categories and where those are located on the map and how that might play in the future. So giving a quick overview of the vision and key initiatives. The vision, it looks forward. The vision for the future helps foster that town center as the cultural and social hub of the city as it continues to grow. But it's also looking back to the past. The vision for Harriman promotes the history of the community and its agricultural and rural roots. So we've got both that looking forward and honoring the past that are important aspects of the vision for the general plan. 4 key initiatives. Growing wisely is the first one. The second one is optimizing open spaces. The third is maximizing unique fiscal opportunities. And the fourth is enhancing and supporting community and culture. So we've got just a little snippet about each of those initiatives. Growing Wisely establishes a framework for creating a healthy and safe community with diverse, high-quality neighborhoods. This key initiative is part of an integrated and clear decision-making process that considers and coordinates efforts to maximize quality open spaces and views, strengthen the fiscal sustainability of the city, and promote water and resource conservation. The second key initiative, Optimizing Open Spaces. Optimizing Open Spaces establishes a framework for ensuring quality open spaces are provided for all of Harriman. This key initiative will evaluate the proximity of open spaces to residents to ensure ease of access, consider views of important vistas, and proactively identify areas to be protected and integrated with new development. The third initiative, Maximizing Unique Fiscal Opportunities. This establishes a framework to make decisions based on leveraging the city's inherent assets and desirable location. This key initiative will be part of a coordinated economic development strategy that remains ready to facilitate bringing non-typical uses and development to the community, whether because of its location along the Mountain View corridor or its access to the natural and recreational amenities. The fourth and last key initiative is enhancing and supporting community and culture. This establishes a framework for accommodating a range of populations and demographics. This key initiative will address the different demands and desires of the whole population for community amenities and community character, recognizing that differences may be based on age, length of residency, and household configuration. The policy guide, as I mentioned, is structured around the 6 priorities. The first one, economic development opportunities. Harriman aims to be a fiscally sustainable, resilient community with a diverse tax base and revenue source. 2, community character. Harriman aims to enhance the public realm throughout the city and guide private development to frame the public realm and create neighborhoods of lasting value and beauty. 3, community amenities. Harriman aims to offer exceptional amenities, including trails, recreation opportunities, improved public realm, social gathering places, and the services and resources for a healthy and happy life. 4, safe transportation choices. Harriman aims to create and maintain a well-connected and coordinated transportation system that allows for safe, multimodal travel throughout Harriman and facilitates connections to the regional transportation system. 5, employment opportunities. Harriman aims to attract and diversify the types of businesses and employment opportunities in the city, while acknowledging that it may not evolve into a conventional office park community or location. 6, mix of housing. Harriman aims to develop a mix of complementary and compatible neighborhoods with housing options that cater to different lifestyles and support the ability to live and stay in Harriman through various life stages. The action plan and implementation consists of, I think we're at about 25 to 28 different action items. We've restructured this a little bit to frame them as action items, and the strategies are used in the previous policy guide section. There's 3 different types of action items: standards and requirements. These are things where it might be something like establishing a riparian buffer overlay or updating open space requirements. So things that are standards and requirements for the city to look at and reevaluate. One that's not on here that might be something to consider is looking at establishing an agricultural or animal rights overlay. I know you talked about it a little bit in some of your work sessions. Rather than binding it to the underlying base zoning, deciding which neighborhoods have more of that agricultural heritage or root or type of character, and creating an overlay zone so that a lot of different lot sizes or zones can have those agricultural animal right opportunities. The second type of action items, programs or investments. This could be looking at expanding programs for youth, young adults, seniors, and all age groups, or looking to invest some capital in defining the city's gateways and different neighborhoods with unique and desired visual features and characteristics. The third type of action items, process and planning. These are things recommending reviewing the future land use map annually or biannually, along with the land development code, so that you're proactively looking to identify things that might need to be changed or updated, and doing that on a regular basis so that you stay a little bit ahead of the curve. The future land use and development chapter, this is the final chapter of the plan, a comprehensive evaluation of the different land use types that are desired in Harriman and are either represented by existing development or looking to other case precedents or studies for best practices. The residential and neighborhood category has 6 different future land use types, ranging from the mountain and canyon residential, which are things that are up in the foothills, the larger lots, the more rural character, all the way up to the mixed-use neighborhood 2, which characterizes the type of development that you see in the town center. The residential neighborhoods of Harriman are the biggest part of Harriman's landscape. Nearly 64% of the developable land within the city and the annexation boundaries is under this residential and neighborhood umbrella category. The second category is the mixed use and commercial categories. Whether it's general retail or neighborhood commercial, we're looking to more specifically identify where some of these uses might occur. From the employment angle, looking at a few different categories that expand the range of employment types, whether it's an employment campus that might be more of a business park and warehouse uses, or more of an office mixed use where there could be some residential live-work situations, but you're looking to create some neighborhood office. Also looking at identifying those unique opportunities for recreational resort or activity centers up in the foothills, something that would cater to the active lifestyle and adventure, camp, glamping, some of those unique things that might fit well in Harriman's context. The last category is our civic and community category. This is the parks and plazas and the open spaces, as well as the utilities and support services, and your civic and community uses like your schools and the city hall and library. This is the current version of the future land use map, showing where all of those different categories are. There's also an overlay of the crosshatch to show where the existing master development agreements are in place right now. Those may have changed. I know they're always changing a little bit, but one of the things to point out is how most of these are structured on the north and east and center areas of Harriman, and those are the areas where a lot of that housing development is occurring, especially the range of housing types. When you look at the areas that are outside of those MDAs, down in the southern area and the central and western area, those are where you see more of those conventional neighborhoods, the neighborhood residential 1, the hillside and agricultural, going into the annexation area and the foothills. So responding to a lot of the comments that we heard about, easing off on the density as you move out to the foothills and away from the center of town. And we feel like the draft of the future land use map is representing a lot of the input and thought that has gone into the plan development process. So that's the end of the overview presentation. I think we can take questions from the Planning Commission, or do we open up the public hearing, Michael?
We'll open the public hearing first. And so,
That's good.
Susie, if you want to just have a seat, we'll open the public hearing, and then we may have questions after that. Typically with the public hearing, we'll let the applicant come back up, which is the city in this case. So at this time, we will open the public hearing, and in regards to the public hearing, I will read the public comment and policy procedure. The purpose of public comment is to allow citizens to address items on the agenda. Citizens requesting to address the commission will ask to complete a written comment form and present it to Wendy Thorpe, Deputy Recorder. In general, the chair will allow an individual 3 minutes to address the commission. A spokesperson recognized as representing a group in attendance may be allowed up to 5 minutes. So we'll open the public hearing at this time.
James Horsley. Thanks for your time, Planning Commission. Appreciate you being here today and being willing to listen to our comments. So a couple properties that we have a little bit of concern with that we've been working with staff on. First property would be so the contaminated site. It's 15 acres over off 126 there. Don't know if you know what piece we're talking about here. But it was rezoned into commercial when we had when the contamination was put there, just because they didn't think they could do residential at that time. We have some opportunity now to be able to clean that site and move the contamination off that site. So that's a site we'd like to be reconsidered to be a residential piece of property there. We've had multiple conversations with staff about it, so I'm sure they can apprise you to some of the communication that we've had regarding that property. Then also we have, right here on Main Street in 126, so the garden plot properties, I don't know if you know what they are there. So the northwest corner there. So we're doing the retail on the east corner for the auto mall there. But on the northwest corner, we got 8 acres there that we have under contract. Some other things we've been talking about with staff is changing the back 5 or 6 acres to residential as well too. Keeping the prime corner retail, so we can have retail there that would flow well with what we're doing with the front half of the auto mall. We're really not seeing a lot of retail people that are wanting that second tier stuff with the prime corners. They are wanting that. So that's one also we'd like to see a reconsideration for some residential the back 5 or 6 acres there. And then the third piece of property, so out there, the Rosecrest is doing that master plan development out there. So we have 45 acres that we have under contract that we're actually looking to join their master plan and be a part of that. It looks on here that they actually have us doing an employment center on that there. So I don't know if you know, but we've actually sold some of the property to the Jordan School District. So there's an elementary school already planned there for that thing. And part of the reason we were doing that elementary school is to have more of a community school that kids can walk to school and everything. So we worked a lot with Michael Malloy to make sure that we planned well where the school would go and how it would work with all of our development around that. So we'd want to make sure that stays residential in that area as well too. And staff can show you a couple of the maps that have been with that master plan development with Rosecrest that they're doing up there. So those are the few of the properties that we'd just like to be reconsidered with what they have out there. And like I said, we've talked to staff about all these things, so they have more information if you need more information on it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else, I am going to close the public hearing at this time. And then turn to the applicant. If Susie, if you'd like to come back up and maybe if there's any additional information here.
Just wondering if we have access to just the map itself, if maybe we could put that on for reference.
On page 395, there's a map.
Yeah, I'll just bring up the map, and Michael did send me the information, especially on the Rosecrest area. Since we'd already published the draft, I didn't want to make any changes to it for tonight, but we have been looking at reconfiguring that to, one, specifically identify which property is the school district property, and make sure that we have that identified, and then looking at reconfiguring some of that area to be more in line with what has been proposed by the MDA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any
Where's
questions
that
or
at? Where's that
discussion?
at? Is that the 45 acres you're talking about?
Yeah. Let me
Where's that at?
see if I can.
Well, I think it's is it the blue?
Yeah, so it is kind of this, is my hand showing up? Yeah, okay. Like I knew I kept like the big cursor for a reason. So it's this area that we're talking about, and I believe it's this site right in here is been purchased by the school district for a school site. So we'll look at kind of reconfiguring, this, I think the idea was with this exit, this is something that we had worked with you all to talk about how to take advantage of the access and that frontage along Mountain View to facilitate some employment opportunities, which is why we had looked at more of the office mixed-use commercial and employment center combination around that
And
access
I don't
point to Mountain
disagree
View.
with what it's proposed to be zoned at. I don't disagree with that. At least me personally, I think it is in line with that area. I understand if the school, if they bought some property to put a school there, but I don't know if necessarily it makes a lot of sense to readjust based off what they're choosing to do.
Yeah, and there is plenty of residential, pretty much everywhere else around that site, and that is one of the things about this. It has a good blend and combination of using the frontage and the access point
Yeah.
for those business uses.
Because there's a school down off of 134. You take a right before you get to Bangor, and it doesn't have many homes around it at all, and it seems to work really well. And so I'm not sure, at least in my opinion, that it has to have homes around it to work well for a community.
And then, Michael, the other two areas sound like they're
There's
to the north. Is that like?
it's a crescent site. Yeah, keep going. It's Harriman Boulevard and 5600 West, that pinkish,
Yep,
yeah,
right there.
In this area?
to the right. Yeah, that
Okay.
is contaminated.
Okay.
And we just, a few years ago, felt like there wasn't an opportunity to clean that site. And so we can't use it for residential in its present state, even though it is treated and capped. It is safe currently, but we couldn't put residential on that site without moving or cleaning the site. The individual who spoke tonight, Mr. Hardy, is working with other, Horsley, sorry, there's an opportunity to move that material to a commercial site, and we could actually potentially have that be residential, which is probably our first recommendation for that property. We just didn't think we'd have an opportunity to do that. And so they're asking in the general plan amendment if we would signal that we'd like to switch that back to residential.
And that has a 7-Eleven kitty corner too, right?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
to the south west.
Yeah.
Why would our
Yeah.
first option be residential?
Yeah, first, it was residential was first.
No, why would our first be residential and not commercial? On a
It's a
main-
difficult site for commercial, and we've already engaged with the adjacent residential community around it, and we know that they had a lot of concerns with commercial use there. And maybe I presuppose, I'm basing my comments off of what we've heard so far from the community on that property. In the past, we've had people say that they were not happy that we changed that to commercial. We just didn't think we'd had another option as a community. We thought we were gonna have to do commercial because residential just couldn't happen there.
And is the third one, the other pink one, just a little
that
farther
north side
over?
of that pink, yeah.
Is it the pink or the red?
Is it
Ish.
neighborhood commercial or general retail, the other,
Right,
the 5-acre one?
right.
Do you know which location
Yeah,
that other
further
one is?
to the right is the garden plots, and I think essentially, James, you were saying that further
of
to
that.
the
But
north.
it's
we would
north,
like
it's
to
on the north
have
corner.
Some residential
by
on
the
the back
AutoZone.
of that, right?
Up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I tend to agree a little bit with you, Michael, on this. The property on the, we'll just say west left side, if there's something that we switch to residential again, I think that one may make more sense. It's a little different design and everything else, but the one on the right, I think I would tend to lean to waiting and seeing what happens, especially as we've started to see all the development in that area with our commercial properties.
Yeah, now
I
this
mean,
would
we got
not,
the garage grill on the other side that's
Yeah, I
going
know.
in, and I think I would venture to say, I think we're pretty premature in considering a rezone on that, and maybe even on the other one right now, even though I tend to agree with you that may make more sense residential.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I
okay.
do. Why would it be difficult to do commercials? It just, the surrounding neighborhoods don't want commercial, I understand. But why is it a difficult site to develop?
It's an unusual shape, and again, with the presence of the contaminated soil, you can move it potentially. There's quite a grade change because we had to put a large cap on top of that soil. So now you're potentially building on top of that cap even. and
That's
then
probably what, a
having-
15, 20-foot berm almost?
Yeah, there's
Okay,
this
so
berm.
from, how deep does the contaminated soil?
I don't know all the details. This
Okay,
was
so
constructed before I
well,
was
well,
hired.
If we were to excavate all that out, it'd have to be moved to point B, wherever that's at, or pay for it to
Yeah.
be disposed as a city. That would that create level ground or depression there?
I think
Probably
ideally,
depression.
and again, this is just hypothetical, right?
Sure,
I'm not playing engineer for the day.
I think it may be, for me, it'd be premature to
Yeah.
even address that.
Historically, we have been told in other reports that consultants have said they feel like we have too much commercial in our city. And like this is one of those areas where there is some difficulty with developing it. And again, I'm just basing on what we've heard from the community so far. In the past, there's been a preference for residential versus commercial in this location.
The one thing that I think we have to consider at this point is we have a rather large development or multiple large developments that are going in west of here. And this will be a highly trafficked area to where this may become a viable commercial plot, though it isn't today.
Right.
Now, just to be
So-
clear, the comment we received tonight would not include the hard corner of 5600 West. And yeah, that corner would still remain commercial at that
Oh, no,
intersection.
yeah, I don't even, in my mind, I don't even see consideration of changing that one at this time.
And that's fine.
The other one, I can understand where you're coming from, and I think it may end up being residential one day, but I don't necessarily believe today we need to change it with what's going in. It may become a very viable commercial, I don't know.
Well, and it's listed as a neighborhood commercial, so that's a lower scale commercial than, what you typically would see, and so those can usually fit on odd sites, and, that's a view corridor coming from the west. You could really, use that kind of view corridor coming in, because as the road turns, you'd be right there at the end, and, that could be very valuable, whereas if it's residential, most likely there's gonna be a 6-foot wall going around that curve. And that's what you're just gonna be seeing, is just a 6-foot wall.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand where the public comment came from. I do understand that, so.
And I think also just the idea with the neighborhood commercial, it's neighborhood commercial / node, so it's intended to be, something that really integrates well with the surrounding adjacent residential. So it could be, a community gathering space. There could even be some temporary, social gathering uses that go in while waiting for commercial that might be more viable. So, there's a range of options that could fit well there and transition
So it's more of
over
like
time.
a pedestrian level commercial, not a.
Yeah, exactly, especially like the backside, where it's adjacent to the residential, that could have a whole different look and feel than what's fronting on the street along Harriman Boulevard.
That'd be a great landscaping place.
Yeah.
See all the trees and everything right when you turn. But regardless, I think it's a little premature to really look at that at this point. And so, but there was, and for discussion, because we are talking about this from the Planning Commission, are there other areas, other things to think about? And I did have one question, well, 1 and 2, I guess. Because we have mentioned the potential idea of a regional park. I know that most of the area up towards Bacchus and that is a planned community. Would we leave that as a planned community, or actually, if that is something we would like to see in this general plan, put it in a park and plaza? And then also the other thought with that, because I think it coincides, is the idea or concept of eventually going west with trails up into Butterfield Canyon. And so I think those go hand in hand. That's why I sort of ask.
Yeah, I think if the city wants to be proactive about identifying, where the open space occurs, then I think that's something that we could propose, including in that planned community area, leaving the rest sort of open for flexibility, but maybe sort of zeroing in on the open space connections and the parks and plazas. And, I think also when you look at the full annexation, potential for Harriman City, that's been reflected in the annexation declaration policy, that it extends even further beyond what we're representing on this future land use map. So there is, potential to expand beyond the boundaries that you're seeing here today. Going down and just kind of showing Camp Williams, going west and showing the Salt Lake County and the BLM land, just sort of that integration, that interface with the foothills and the canyons, could be a beneficial direction for showing on the future land use map, just to sort of illustrate the character and context of Harriman and the way the future uses are organized, responding to that surrounding context.
Kind of in that same area, maybe we want to put in an educational campus too. I mean, we want to put what we want to see, right?
Yeah.
So
We
let's
had a
put
very
it-
detailed plan, and then we got some direction to try to step back and be a little bit more general. I think it is something that would be definitely worth like a follow-up project or action item, would be to develop a neighborhood plan for that area specifically, that essentially represents like, this is what we would like to see where, based on what we know is
See,
coming.
that's the tough part,
transportation-wise.
because I agree with you, but I also look at it from the perspective of, we have to put it somewhere or it never gets considered like it should. And that's the part that's tough, is if we don't give it a general area where we think this is where it needs to be. I know adaptations occur, and we may say, okay, yeah, we need to shave off 20 acres on this side, but we're okay with putting it on the other side or inward more or anything like that. But if we're looking at it saying, we need a 60-acre park that's programmable, that's a regional park, then it's something we'll be working with everyone else. Why did we not put it on there somewhere? And so that's the only thought from my perspective on a recommendation to the city council, is that they find a place within there that they think it belongs, that we put it on there. So it's a guideline for the city staff, for the planning commission, for the city council, that we want a big park in this area and we need to plan for it now, instead of saying, this is a planned community and hopefully they put a park somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the type of park too, a lot of the feedback that we got during the process was, can we have a regional park that is more of a, a central park, a Liberty Park that's really, surrounded by residential that faces that park. It's part of the community. It's a destination. It's not kind of just tucked back behind some houses, but it really, invites the development around it to frame and respond and activate.
And even
that
have trails from Midas Creek going up into it, so those from other communities can ride their bikes up or go into. And I think at least I'm in agreement with
And that's
you.
where I think we need to be. I think we need that park along Midas Creek. I don't care where it's at in there, but I think along Midas Creek with the trails is critical. I mean, I think that's.
I think about the big park in San Francisco that's right along a creek that goes all the way to the ocean.
Yeah.
And I just think about that, and it's almost longer than it is
Right,
wide.
it's very linear,
And it's like, oh, here's a baseball field, here's another baseball field, here's 3 soccer fields, and it just sort of drags on a little bit. And so.
So you're thinking perhaps in this study, just to show it as a placeholder, so that you're put on notice.
Well, it's a general plan. It's a plan that we're trying to get. And now, does that mean that there's 50 acres here and the land developer comes in and says, we really want to put homes there, but we'll put the 50 acres over here for, I don't think any of us would have a problem with that, because we want to see a large park in that area.
I like the notion of a placeholder, not saying it has to be fixed where you put it. but-
Yeah, and I think sometimes we keep it, we step back to make it a little more general than it should, and then we don't get anything we want, because it's like, well, you never said we had to have it. It was never on your general plan. And then we get the opposite side of it.
And I think-
And I've seen that too many times over the last 7 years. I don't want to see it again. I want to see it where it says, here's a park. If you want to propose moving it up or down or right or left, whatever you want to say, we're probably okay with that.
Yeah, and I think it really fits with the other policies and, priorities of the plan too, is being more proactive.
And even speaking of potential campus like USU, if they were to come here, proposing in a general area something, instead of saying, well, we may or may not.
Right. And we,
Or
we
we're
have
not
the
going
information.
to, but they may come. You know
Yeah,
what I
from the
mean?
regional transportation plan of where those major transportation and transit corridors are going to be. And so that was the idea with our, sort of our previous proposal, was to, take that information and then say, it's like, well, based on where, these major roads are connecting, or where the transit line is going to come in, these are the types of uses and intensity of uses that seem to make sense based on what we know about the transportation system.
And that's my only two hiccups with this that I see. I mean, you guys have done an excellent job, and you've put together a great plan, but at least from the perspective here, it's really, those are two big items that I look at that really can't not be on here somewhere. And so, and I don't know, other comments from the Planning Commission. I feel like I've been talking a lot now.
You have.
I have.
I mean, along that same vein, I'd like to see that. I know we talked a lot about that employment center on the north there, along 118th, extending further out. I'd like to see, I mean, I don't think that's covered right now in the existing planned community we're looking at as far as annexation. So I would love to see that. More opportunities similar to Bullfrog out there on 118th. I think we need to indicate that we want that. I don't know where everybody else stands, but I think we need to indicate that we want employment centers along that stretch of 118th and not, I mean, that can fit into, again, it can fit into planned community, of course, but I'd like to see that. We've talked about that quite a bit.
And that's the tough part, because the planned community could do all of these things that we want.
Right.
But it also could do none of the things that we want.
Correct.
And that's where it becomes difficult, and I'm not sure how to best articulate that and make sure that it's written correctly to where they're saying, okay, this planned community is, and you know better than I don't know, 1,000 acres, whatever it is.
1,190, I think.
There you go.
Maybe
And
1193.
saying our thought is that in that planned community, we want a park of at least 50 acres and preferably along Midas Creek, or 100 acres or whatever it is. And we also want an educational campus that is 100 acres in this area. Now, I don't know if we have at least I don't know if I have a preference of where in that area, or employments that are where in that area, but because I do want to give them some freedom, because I do think that our developers do a good job when we are able to guide them on, these are the three things we do want in there, though. And they do a good job when they have at least some general guidelines of what we would like to see.
Yeah, agreed. And sorry, I misspoke. I think it's 1,900 acres. Like it's just under 2,000, because Olympia Hills is about 930, and
You're
then the
probably only
Kennecott
counting
land
one of them.
is around 1,000.
So, but that's my only input on this. So.
Okay.
I agree with both of them. And I just want to say thank you so much for everything you've done on this. I know that everything that I've asked for looks great. And I appreciate how you've put all of this together and all the work you've put in it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I personally think we're ready to get it. I think the council needs this, and
I think just if we do make a recommendation, we need to be very clear on this planned community and our thought process on what needs to be written in, or how it would need to be worded on how that works. I don't know, Michael, if there's an easy way to do that, because we want to give them some leeway, but we also want to make it clear that we'd like to see a 50-acre park in that's region or more. I'm not sure what size. I'm just throwing out that size. And so
a couple different, I mean, one is to put the detailed information back on the overall future land use map. Another is to do sort of the planned community, maybe show the park, but then do sort of an inset map that focuses in on that has a little bit more detail and kind of reflects some of the work and ideas that we've been working over, the past year or two, with specifying some of the particular future land use categories in certain areas, some of the previous versions of the future land use map that you've seen. So those, I would say are the two approaches. One is to either, put the information, back on this main map, or the second option would be to, have a separate inset map that reflects a little bit more of that detail for the planned community area.
that sort of talks about this is a planned community with X size park that we would like in it and educational campus. I mean, is that sort of what you're saying, more so? Maybe I'm
Or,
missing it.
just having a map that essentially, reflects the earlier versions that show, the
Okay.
different categories and different locations.
More of a master plan overlay for that area.
Right. Understanding that everything, and I think that's a great point, is to know that the future land use map is, the categories and the types are assigned at the parcel level when that parcel level is available, but it is still, they're meant to be sort of loose boundaries, a little bit fuzzy, so that there can be some change, whether it's from one property to the next or just expanding or constricting based on the context. So it's not a hard and fast line like the zoning map is.
How about even just some bubbles, that 50-acre, 100-acre bubbles that are labeled park, education? And I don't want to pin anybody down to location. I don't have enough information. I just want to put everyone on notice that this is what we want.
That's what the community needs.
I think that's just what we need to do, is just put it in there. And then when they come in and present, we can,
I know developers are really good at asking for changes. They've done it a couple times, so.
Let me just ask a clarifying question. Is the concern that when a proposal to develop under the, or using the planned community tool, or this, this large area master plan tool, is it that you feel like just in general, we need to make sure we achieve a certain like ratio of open space? Like typically in a planned development, we have 20%
I think we're a little
open
bit past
space.
just open
Okay.
space. And what I mean by that is we're to the point where it has to be a planned regional type park almost of open space. And I understand open space, but I also know what I've gotten with open space when we say that sometimes from developers.
Where I was going with is we can think about this in two ways. One is a general term that is described in the plan itself. When we talk about what do we mean by planned community, we could elaborate that is going to include this large regional park or something. Maybe it's based on how many acres. I think right now the council is toying with the idea, is that 200 acres or 400 acres as a threshold. But out of that out of that quantity, is it the Planning Commission's recommendation that a certain portion of that be a type of park space or open space? That's one way to think of it. So it could be applied anywhere in the city, and when you do that, we're expecting to have some type of park space as part of that. Or we can say specific to this future annexation area in the northwest quadrant, that is a specific location where we're hoping to achieve a particular regional park. See what I'm saying? Is that one you're tying it to
that's the direction that you were
geography,
talking.
the other one is you're
I
saying
do
it's
think in
just a
this
general
specific
principle.
area, that's what we're looking at if we can accomplish it, because I don't think there's a lot of other areas that really fit in that mold very well.
Okay.
I think we also have to think about public perception, because they're going to look at this and be like, they're just going to give them what they want in a planned community, because not a lot of people understand the concept of a planned community. So I worry about more public backlash almost if we aren't putting these things on and showing, because they don't know, they're not coming to the meetings and listening to us say, oh, we want a regional park, we want the school, we want the employment center.
Not all the time, but they do every once in a while, Heather.
I know, right? But that's kind of where I'm going at, is I think that we want to be transparent too, and we want everyone to know our expectations.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, we are at the point where as this body, as a planning commission, this is a guideline for us. And when you look at a planned community, there's not really much of a guideline there right now.
Very good point.
And so if we say in this area, we are wanting a park of X amount of size, and we do want there to be employment centers in this, and we do want this, I don't think we're caught on the idea of okay, they come in and say, we'd like to do residential homes here, but we're okay with moving the employment center over on this half of the property versus this one. I don't think anyone's opposed to that because it's accomplishing the same thing. It's just saying, what if we move it here instead of here? And we move our residential from here to here and our employment center from here to here. I think that's, because it is a general plan, it's a guideline, it's to help us. And if it accomplishes those big key things that we believe the community needs, then it's what the general plan's accomplishing. So that's where my struggle is with this big pink area that no one knows what it is.
Well, and to be honest, this big pink area now is bigger than just the one annexation project. So to me now, I hate to say this, but I think we've taken the easy way out as a city now, and we've said, okay, well, we've got this new tool, so we're gonna apply it to everything else that we've got left to annex, possibly annex, where it's really removing a lot of our vision that we can put out there as a commission to say, you know, this is what we vision
Or
in
the city
this area.
council.
Right.
Because they'll look at it next and.
Well, I'm just saying,
they'll
but
have
that's
some
our,
thoughts as
we're
well.
in our body right now is what I'm saying. So I don't agree with that whole area being pink. I agree with the annexation area being pink, showing that park, you know, a park
Do we
in there.
happen to have because we had it in different colors previously. We had some of the different stuff outlined out there. Do we have that on file available right now or no? Just curious what we envisioned
Hopefully do.
previously and then it turned into pink.
Let me unplug so I can look for it without
Sure.
needing to.
Can I add a thought?
Yes, please.
So with that planned community area and looking at that in the light of the master plan community tool that we're hoping is adopted by the council at the next meeting, the underlying zoning there would still come back to the planning commission for your consideration and recommendation. So these types of additional details could be worked out at that level and at that stage.
But at the same time, what I've found is we've always looked at it as our general plan as a guideline.
Right.
And if some of that guideline is not in there, then we have a lot of pushback from developers and other people saying, you never planned for this.
Right.
And now you're wanting it. Why are you wanting it? All you're doing is giving me grief now. And that's where I have trouble with this. That if we don't want that in our general plan, don't have it. If we do want it, we should put it in there. And I don't disagree with you. I'm just looking at previously some of the stuff we've had where it's like, I mean, some of our area, we originally had the campus going there, the Salt Lake Community College and things like that. And then we moved it to another spot. And then all of a sudden we had a bunch of people swoop in high density because that is what we wanted around the campus because we thought college kids, things like that. And then all of a sudden we had high density in an area where it was not planned for anymore because they took away what we had planned for it. And that's why I feel like we got to be really cautious on how we do it because we look at ordinances and zoning and general plan on this body. And if nowhere on there it says we want a large park, it's not going to happen.
I agree, we need to be proactive rather than reactive.
And Chase, I get what you're saying. I really do get what you're saying. But if there's going to be an underlying zone that comes to us, why do we not? Let's put that underlying zone in right now that we would see as a body. You know, does that make sense? I mean, those will come to us, but why not put some of those underlying zones in their visions that we have right now? So I know what you're saying.
And I
but
don't think this body is so stringent that if they come
No.
to us and say, can we move it? We're still going to get you that size park. We're just wanting to move it from here to here because it makes more sense with roads and with home types and things like that. I don't think we're going to have any problems with that.
And I don't think that whole thing needs to be, I'm okay with some of that extra area being pink, you know, for some
Yeah.
flexibility. But some of these that we're concerned about, I think we need to put in. I think some employment centers. I mean, those that are,
So this is the old one right here. So we had USU as the blue to the left of what was proposed or estimated, and then we had the light industrial, which was the blue or corporate center or employment center, whatever they call it. And so those were the two main. I know that the idea of the regional park was a new concept that has been coming up more and more. And so, but see, I'm wanting to see it in there. I don't want to hold them so strict that it's like, okay, it's here or nowhere. If they were to say, okay, we want to move this over here and move it to where along Bacchus is where the light industrial is, I don't think anybody would have a problem. And so it just, when we get too broad, we never get what we want.
So would it be difficult to specify within the previous blue area that was master development? Would it be difficult to specify within that blue area there needs to be a 50-acre?
And I'm leaning a little bit towards the guidance of the staff on this, because I'm not sure the easiest way to do that.
Right. Instead of making it like a general, open space, but actually saying within this, area, which.
Because the worst thing that could happen is we get open space and we can't put a single field on it, because it's like, yeah, it's the slopes with
It's
my
just
creek,
trails
it's this,
or-
it's this,
right.
it's little pockets that didn't fit into the residential
Retention
building.
areas.
That's my fear. And they'll say, I accomplished what you wanted. You said you wanted 20% of open space. It's there, and none of it can be used.
That is one of your follow-up action items, is to look at your open space standards and requirements so that you can be a little bit more specific about things like that, so that it's usable open space. It's not just the unbuildable areas.
Yeah, and I look at it just because I've been now to Bluffdale, Riverton, West Jordan, and South Jordan, and they all have programmable space that we have almost nothing of. I mean, we do have one, Butterfield Park, that has some programmable space, but we're really lacking everywhere else.
Yeah. So here's a couple of thoughts for you to consider. When we typically do a plan development, by ordinance, there's an agreement on the developer's part that we're going to identify 20% minimum open space. How you achieve that open space threshold, you're awarded certain percentages based on whether it's improved park space or if it's natural vegetation. And you get a different ratio, as we know. But that is a negotiated process. There's not a requirement right from the very beginning, like, here's your development rights, and you have to, the city's extracting essentially a certain amount of acreage for park space. That relationship doesn't work. It has to be this negotiated, relationship. To do development, we can't have an extraction, so to speak. Also, if as a city, we identify specific property as park space or open space, we basically have taken away the development rights for that property, right? I've been trained that if we do that, we better be prepared to buy it, right? So most cities have gone away from saying this area we want to park right here, because when somebody wants to come in and develop that property, and we're saying no because that's planned to be a park space, and yet we're not purchasing it, we're not buying it. So again, that's not a road that we really want to go down. That's why I was asking earlier, is this kind of more like a general standard, kind of like a plan development, where you say, okay, we understand in this negotiated relationship, we're going to have a certain percentage of open space, like 20%. But in exchange for that, we are allowing for clustering, we're modifying certain zoning standards, we're being creative. It's a negotiated development process.
And I think a good example of that, whether we like it or not, is Creek Ridge, right? If you look at that development on this general plan map, you see that large 50-acre cluster of regional park open space. And again, that was, like Michael mentioned, a negotiated process to get that to that point. And Michael articulated that better than I did, and that was, I think, what my original point was trying to get at is that objective is accomplished better at the negotiation phase of a development agreement for a master plan community than it is on a general plan map, in my opinion.
That makes sense. So how do we ensure then, I guess there's no way to ensure it as our body.
How do
in
we,
the general plan,
but I
in
do
this
think,
process.
I do think we have to put some sort of green on there.
But that's what they're saying, I don't think we can, because then you're tying it.
Yeah, but that's not true, because we have elsewhere. How can we get away with putting it somewhere else, but we're not allowed to put it on this
That's
one?
existing.
We have it on areas that we own,
The what?
that we own.
So most of it's
How did you
what
get
we've
that in
owned.
the first place?
It was dedicated to us.
Yeah, through those
Yeah.
negotiations.
Through those negotiations, so.
So on this general plan, if it's not annexed into the city, there is really no way you're saying that we should put a park on there? Because that's what it feels like is being said to me.
Correct, that's what I'm hearing.
Not on the general plan.
Not on the general plan.
Not on the general plan.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we can't fight for it when they come to the negotiation table.
And that's what I'm advising, is that is a stage where we can say, as you recall from our master plan community tool, it's at our discretion, and it comes to you first, and you as the planning commission.
So, and I know earlier in a meeting today, we talked about how we will probably see two plans, one with the education campus, one without it. With the idea that because of what schools can do, they can still build in almost any zone and everything else, they come how they want. And so I'm just,
I don't know, there's much we can do.
it almost sounds like the only thing on here that we could add if we wanted to is that blue somewhere.
That
The blue, the light industrial that's really the only thing we could attempt to add anywhere on here if we felt like we needed it, and that'd be a guideline. Everything else with the schools, with the parks that's negotiated, figure it out as the process goes.
And another option, and this is one that Susie mentioned, is to look at your standard zoning and say, what are the standards we have there for open space requirements? Right now, we have a 20% requirement in most places for open space dedications, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that could be looked at.
Yeah, I think the hard part with that is we do have a decent amount of stretching and sloped areas and things like that, to where getting it, for no better word, because density likes to say clustered, getting clustered park area to where we have a little bigger area.
And Chase, I'll say this to you too. I think my biggest concern about this whole area being pink is
We're not providing a vision from the city.
yeah, that's
We're
if I'm
waiting
a
for the
resident,
vision
if
to
I'm a
come from
resident
someone
watching
else.
this, it hasn't been through our processes. And this is the biggest area left to develop in our city, really. I think everybody's looking at this area. And we're just showing them this pink area, just saying it can be anything. To a resident, that looks like it can be,
And I do know it's not annexed in the city, so.
Yeah,
I do understand
There's only so much we can.
but still, to show that, I
We
don't know.
think we have an idea, a solution.
I like it.
Do it.
That's why we hire smart people in our city.
The master plan also specifies what is contemplated within that pink area, right? It's not just anything. It is broad, right?
But speaking from a previous rookie resident, they're not gonna look at that. They will look at the map and see that it looks like a blank slate.
And there's no vision.
That's just, and we could try to educate and all that, but we know that some residents don't get engaged and just look at that and that's,
Sure, that's fair.
I'm just trying to avoid that.
I want to
guess
hear
I'm
this
trying to avoid
brilliant
that. I want
idea.
this to go
I'm actually a
smooth.
little bit excited. What's this brilliant idea we
what's
came
this,
up with?
So in the future land use and development chapter, each type has a spread that has, the map and a very, detailed description of what that category, is intended to do and the specifics. So for that planned community spread, that's where we can infuse some of these details about, the open space and the mix of uses and, where things should occur to the degree possible, sort of, leading with a little bit more direction based on, the context of specific areas, so.
Well, that's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll just add more language to this, and we'll make it consistent with the draft tool, the large master plan tool that we've been working on. So I think that's where we can do it. And it'll be general enough that it's not specific, we're not identifying specific land. And that's why I was saying, I think it's, we've been talking about possibly using this new tool in other places in the city. So in other places, we probably want to have an understanding that when you enter into this tool, into this negotiated process, that park space and open space is part of the expectation in that negotiated process.
And I
But we need to
think it's
communicate
more
that up
on-
front
Yeah,
the
it's
general
more on
plan,
putting
right?
it together too, on the park space, because it is sort of what we're lacking in parts of our city right now.
Yeah, so I think we can do that, Chase.
All right, I like it. I like smarter people when
We're glad you're here.
I give unrealistic
you, Mike?
ideas and
Was
you
that
guys
you?
can figure it out.
We gotta give credit where credit's due. 13.
I just wanted to make sure Andrea didn't have any comments or questions.
Andrea, do you have any questions? I'll take that as a no. She might be muted.
I did notice one other very small thing, and I can't believe I have overlooked this, but we've been talking last night with the city council about future needs for fire station, public works, and as the planning commission knows, the city has purchased some property for a future public works building, and we're introducing this new civic land use type in
Isn't
our
that all
general plan, which is
5600?
great. But we didn't identify our public works yard as civic.
Okay.
So, and that's my fault, Susie, we just haven't communicated that to you, so I think
You
we
guys
should.
change every day, so it's hard to
Yeah.
keep everything up to date.
This is true. Something, Susie's been trying to watch our agendas because she says, I'm not used to working in a city that is just so rapidly developing and changing general plan and zoning
to our
amendments and,
lives,
Yeah.
yeah.
Forrest, Daryl, what do you think of our draft master plan?
I've offered input from off this table before in the past, and I'm seeing it incorporated in here. The fire station concept, maybe police precincts out there in the neighborhoods, I have no idea where they would go, so I'm sure you already have a notion. I like what I'm seeing. I don't like, as everyone else has commented, the idea of not putting in the public's notice that, hey, it is our intent to have 20%, as you're saying, but I probably would take it even a step further, and 20% could be 1,000 5-foot wide strips. That's not going to accomplish the purpose. So there has to be a conglomerate of space, and then you can do what you want with the rest. But I appreciate your explanation saying that we'll have an opportunity to voice that. I haven't been through that process yet, but I do have a voice, and I do share opinions, and am
You're going to have an option or a chance with the very next agenda item.
and I'm willing to do
welcome.
that. So with what you're presenting, I'm okay with this, with those notions also noted.
She's relieved. She's like, oh man, 2 new people on the planning commission. Start this over again.
So at least, in my opinion, guys, we're looking at a recommendation to the city council. In that recommendation, I believe there's at least 2 or 3 different items that probably would need to be voiced in that if we're going to recommend that it moves on to the city council, which oh, can we hear her now? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, Andrea, can you hear us now? Can we hear you?
Yeah.
Oh, there you
Can
are.
you hear me?
I can now.
Perfect.
Did you have any thoughts that you'd like to share on this?
They're gone now. I'll see if I can remember, but if not, I'm okay right now. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Nope, that works. So I think at this point, we're looking at a recommendation to the city council. I believe we probably, if we want to recommend this approval to adopt and move on and not table it for it to come back to us, I think that we need to voice the couple of items that we brought up here. And then it sounds like Susie and Michael came up with a potential plan to help be able to provide a little more of a vision, but also allow still for for some freedom in how they do that, which I think is exactly what we do want to see. So, looking at this body for motion, though.
Motion. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. What do we want to put in the motion?
Well, at least from my perspective, it's the unannexed area. There's certain amount of parks and education, and then potentially the other areas that we feel like need to sort of be allocated for that area. I don't know the best way to word that, though. With this area,
But for the existing areas, excuse me.
it's really just
still
for the
feel
one
it's
area.
Too premature.
Oh yeah, no.
Under the
So we're only talking about this.
We're only talking about the pink area, the planned community. That in the planned community, we're looking at setting some standards on how the green, the open space will be allocated and placed in it, something like that. Michael?
Yes.
Want me to give a shot?
I thought you might have a recommendation
Oh,
or
sorry,
thought.
restate the question.
So in wording, something along the lines of, in the, I always forget the name of it, in the planned community, our recommendation is that when we talk about open space, to have it, for no better words, clustered or put together in larger parked areas that can be used as programmable space.
Yeah, and our plan development does require currently that there is a certain percentage that is contiguous open space, right? That's common in our plan development tool currently.
Yeah.
My concern is, I think that may be broadly applicable if this tool were used in other locations, but I don't think that your interest in an educational facility would be
Well, the state has
applicable in other
the
locations.
state has a lot
That's-
of requirements on that we can't do
Right,
much.
right, okay.
So, and I'm aware of that.
So I think we can
unfortunately.
address the open space issue.
I think the open space and
Does it need to be in the
then light
motion
industrial.
tonight, or is that in, are we going to address that?
If you want to make a recommendation to the council, then just direct staff to prepare, or our consultant to prepare, additional language to address this concern, the open space and park space.
Additional language and diagrams to reflect, some direction for this area.
Within the planned communities, the northwest quadrant planned community zone.
So again, we're talking about the tool generically. So if it's used in
It's-
other
yeah.
places, we're going to use the same
So
standard.
it's like, it's a planned community
Yeah.
category, and then we're also looking at, more detail or general, detail for this specific area. So it's kind of two different things, and I think we just need to decide, if that is two different things that you want us to bring forward to the council, or if we're just staying with providing more detail for the planned community future land use category, or if we want to show any sort of conceptual use mix diagram for this specific area. And it could be both, it could be one or the other.
Yeah, I'll give this a shot. You guys tell me if I do this okay. You ready?
Ready.
I'm nervous. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the draft general plan with additional comments that staff and our consultant add in language in the planned community zone, additional language. Make sure Wendy's keeping, you okay, Wendy? Additional language and diagrams for addressing open space and parks and the education, or not?
Not the
No,
education.
I didn't say that, strike that. Also,
Education.
I would like to, also adding that industrial along 118th, extending that along 118th.
Recommendation along that area.
Yep, recommendation to change that along that area to industrial.
What about the city's public works facility? Do
And
we
adding.
identify that as
yes,
civic?
And modifying the public works facility on 5600 from,
Or other locations, just
Yeah.
so it leaves
Yeah,
it
just
open.
identify
identify other civic
civic
encourage city
uses, yeah,
uses.
civic locations.
and just update it.
And update accordingly.
Motion made by Lauren,
I'll second.
second by Heather. We'll call for a vote. Heather?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
And Andrea?
Yes.
Yes, we got you on. All right, now we'll move on to item 4.2, which is also on for a public hearing. And thank you, Susan. Which is a recommendation to approve design standards and land development regulations for proposed Olympia master development on 933 acres.
Okay, this is just a short introduction. This is something we have been working on, and we talked about in our work meeting already, is the pending consideration of annexation petition to the city. And along with that annexation is a development agreement and design standards for that development agreement. This was the previous or the current general plan for this area, as we just talked about. We are now identifying this as a planned community area of the city. This is the proposed draft plan. Now you can see that planned community area extends beyond even the annexation area into what we call a annexation declaration policy that the city council adopted years ago, that we do have interest in annexing this property to extend our boundaries even beyond Bacchus Highway. This area, Olympia Hills, was approved by Salt Lake County, and they had guaranteed a maximum number of 6,330 residential units. And this is what the design standards is. It will be guiding upon annexation if that is what happens through this process. So what are our steps? Last night, the city council did vote on the annexation petition and essentially accepted it. They said that that they will continue to study and consider this petition. There was also a vote on the large Project Master Plan Community Enabling Act, but that was continued. They had some questions on that, and that will go to the next available city council meeting in August. And of course, tonight we had a work session on the draft master development agreement that was in our previous meeting. And then following, or part of that meeting, the Planning Commission expressed interest in having a special Planning Commission meeting that we will advertise, and it'll be just a work meeting specifically on this master development agreement and the development standards or the design standards that we're talking about tonight. So we're having a hearing tonight on the draft design guidelines or standards, but as we stated in the staff report, this is really an element of the MDA. It's just a big project, and so we wanted to have early comment from you and from the public on what these design guidelines mean, and are we heading in the right direction? Do we need to make further changes? So we anticipate bringing this back to the Planning Commission for further action and a hearing, marrying the design guidelines up with the master development agreement and having them before you for potential action on that August 5th meeting. Again, I put together these slides before our last meeting, and I can't remember, did we say Monday or Wednesday that we're trying to get together?
Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay.
First.
For some reason I was thinking Monday, but all right, so, and Wendy's already working on that draft agenda and announcement and everything. So anyway, so the time is yours to take public comment and ask further questions if needed of staff. But again, we're really just going to be identifying what are your concerns and questions, what are the things we need to be working on before we bring this back to you for further review at our next work meeting.
Thank you, Michael. We will open the public hearing at this time.
I don't know which graphic is more
I
relevant.
forgot to
so.
ask last time, Wendy, did we have any electronic? Okay. Awesome. Seeing no public comments at this time, we'll close the public hearing, and I would call you back up.
Can we close it?
Would there be any reason to leave it open that I'm,
So
is there
we
going
will
to
be
be,
having
is
a
there going to
hearing
be
on the-
major changes that occur? I guess that's a better
Well,
question.
we will be having a hearing on the MDA.
Okay,
Because both components really will form the land use regulations for this property. So by state law, we have to have a hearing on the MDA.
Then
and the
I'm
design
okay with
standards are
closing this
part of the
public hearing.
MDA.
yeah,
So I just want to
Yeah.
make sure.
yeah, I'm okay with closing this public hearing if we have one on the MDA. So we'll close the public hearing on this item, and then I'm assuming there's no more from city staff on this, and so we'll turn to the Planning Commission for additional comments, discussion, questions, et cetera.
So I think that one of the things that I'd like to see, at least in the design, is the limitation on block sizes. I believe it was set at 1,000 feet.
Do you have the pages up? What page is that on?
427. I'm seeing it on 427.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
It was a 500-page.
Yeah, maximum block length, 1,000 feet. Commercial center, 800, town center, village center, 800, neighborhood, 1,000. I think that it needs to be much smaller, that the maximum block length needs to stay under 400.
Can you help me to understand?
So the reason is, when you look at a walkable community, you typically want to have variation in, you don't want to just walk down a long road, you know, that's just same thing constantly. Smaller blocks allow for better transportation, more avenues of, or paths that you're able to make your way around the neighborhood. And these larger blocks, you know, they tend to create these roadways that are, you know, people really want to speed down because they've got 1,000 feet, you know, almost a quarter mile that they can go without any interruption. And so typically, when you look at traditional urban design, you know, the block size, they tend to be at the 400 feet max length. Salt Lake, you know, Salt Lake City, when you look at Salt Lake City, you know, they do have much
We're
larger
on
blocks.
page 427, if that helps you, whoever's steering.
And I don't think that we want, you know, Salt Lake City type blocks, you know, in these neighborhoods and these commercial centers. We want to be able to be walkable. We want people to be able to get there and park and then go to the different places and not have to drive from one store or commercial center to another, you know, within the same development. It should be walkable. That'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it. Maybe staff can help me. What is a typical block size in, let's say, a neighborhood or something like that? What are some typical?
In Harriman,
Yeah,
I'd probably defer to engineering.
I'm just curious so I can sort of like,
yeah.
in my mind, visualize.
I'm not
what the
sure what our
difference is.
maximum block length is in our city engineering standards, but maybe while Jonathan is thinking about that. When this project was approved by the county, in the county design guidelines or standards, they did have quite a bit of section on connectivity. And it's not that the developer is opposed to achieving a higher level of connectivity than perhaps we currently have in some of our communities. But they were concerned that the way the original MDA was structured, or the approval was structured in the county, was a little bit too limiting. It prescribed a certain standard, and then if they needed flexibility, they had to go back to essentially the county to ask for an exception. Their desire is to have the right, essentially, to have that exception right in the design standards, and not have to come back and ask us for that longer block length.
You're saying they want what they're asking for?
Yeah, so I encourage them to relook, so they remove that connectivity section out.
Sure.
I encourage them to try to find that middle ground and try and reintroduce it. So we do have some language in the design standards that address the issue. I also shared with them a publication called the Utah Street Connectivity Guide. It was published by the Wasatch Front Regional Council in 2017. This was an extensive document trying to show communities why connectivity is actually better for health, wealth, longevity, opportunity. I mean, there's just all sorts of good reasons why we should try and maybe have a higher level of connectivity than we currently have. I know that this has reached the ears of our community development director and our engineering department as well. It's a big issue that we're talking a lot about right now in engineering and planning. But with that said, there's also the balance of saying, well, we are dealing with some topography, and we are going to be dealing with areas where we will likely have longer block lengths than what was maybe ideal. There's the ideal and there's the real. So we're trying to figure out what is that balance and how do we manage that tool in a way that the developer feels like when they need that option, they have the right to use that.
Couldn't we word it in the MDA for the administrator to make that decision if it is a topography problem or something?
Yeah.
Specifically, couldn't we just do that rather than allowing these huge blocks?
Like I said, maybe we haven't quite found that middle ground just yet, but that's where they're coming from. You know, they're saying that they want to have the expectation that they know that when they need that tool, they have the right to use that tool.
But I think to Heather's point, I think that's what we try to negotiate, try to put in there somehow is that there's that option to do it, and it can be an administrative decision. Doesn't have to come back to us necessarily, but
And
I
that's
don't want to create those.
precisely how that tool would be used, right? is-
Right, and I don't want to create loopholes. I mean, this is, to me, this is how we created loopholes in the system. We open it up to everything.
Yeah.
Because they're saying there's certain areas they want it, so we open it up to everything, and then
And then you're
they
stuck
take
with
advantage of. Then you're
1,000-foot
stuck with that.
blocks
I think
everywhere.
that's where we've gotten in trouble.
So, I mean, is there, and again, I'm a visual person, what typically is built on a maximum block length of 800 or 1,000? What do we see? Is it more townhomes? Is it single-family homes typically? I mean, I would venture to say it's probably townhomes or condos or something like that. And so I'm curious because I think we've addressed or figured out over the last 3 months that we don't have as many single-family homes in our community as we want, and we have more townhomes than most communities in the county of Salt Lake. And so are we promoting or encouraging a lot more townhomes and not as many single families by allowing the block length to be lengthened so much? And I guess that's a question. And I don't know the answer, and I also know regardless in the MDA, if they're allowed to build X amount of homes, they're going to build X amount of homes. We've worked with this developer before. I've never seen them build less. And
So when you have the larger blocks, it's easier to do higher density.
yeah,
And so when you have smaller blocks, you know, you're able to have, let's say you have a 200-foot deep lot. You're able to have 2 of those deep, and that makes your 400 feet, you know, and then you can have 100-foot lots go across 4 of them. And so it's more conducive to your residential than the mega blocks where you have so much space that, you know, you can have these huge developments within them.
and I know,
But if you look at, especially if you look on the East Coast, where you have smaller towns that start small, like Harriman was, you know, they started with smaller blocks. And then they got, you know, as you got further out, you know, those blocks would get slightly bigger and slightly bigger, but they'd never get to the huge scale until you get to the suburbs around those towns. So I think that it's important to keep the scale as a pedestrian scale, not a car scale.
yeah, I guess I'm looking at, and I'm trying to put a vision together with the block sizes and other things, and I don't disagree with what you're saying because I like the idea of a walkable community, et cetera. But I'm trying to see a little bit more so of what they're trying to accomplish and what they're doing, and what we as a community and a vision from our side, what we want to accomplish, what our goals are. Because they have goals, we have goals. Once we get it all together, it becomes a better community. It's just how it is. And so I guess I'm trying to look at it from that perspective a little bit. In their MDA, they're going to have X amount of homes. And so whether they cluster them in these long blocks and then all of a sudden we have a large community center or parks or USU is allowed more space. I mean, I'd much rather have USU have an extra 50 acres and cluster a couple more. I mean, there's different ideas of how we look at this. And so I guess for me, I'm trying to understand their reasoning of why they want these huge long blocks. And so,
Well, Mike, weren't you saying these are connector blocks? These are not.
True, in the map that we had up earlier, right, those are collector streets, right?
Right. So it's this street type and design, section 3.0, that's calling commercial centers 1,000-foot block. The whole purpose, those older communities, Salt Lake City, they based theirs on 66-foot wide lots. 10 of them were 660-foot block plus the half street on either side. So you ended up with 700 and some odd feet. I'm not saying 66-foot wide lots, but could you limit a block instead of by distance by 10 lots? A block can't be any longer than 10 lots. That would make it flexible.
So what if it's 150-foot wide lots?
I don't think in this area we have those, do we?
no, we won't. We won't. I'd
Well,
like to.
you say that we won't, but I mean, if we give them the option, they have the option.
It's going to be hard for them to fit in what they originally had proposed,
Right.
house-wise, period.
So I'm just
Right.
looking on this too, and it says at the very bottom, it says connectivity preferences may be modified through the administrative modification process set forth in the MDA. So I think what we need to do is set that where they need to be, and then we can obviously negotiate that further if we need to. But I
Right.
think that we should put our vision and relay that to the staff, what you think that should be. So maybe go through that and read off, what numbers you want to see changed.
Just to interject, I apologize, and I probably should have mentioned the lead consultant for the developer, Eric Langbart, is here and would be happy to answer any of your questions. And we're the city is the one who's really been driving this issue and sharing this with you. Chase, our city attorney, and Blake, our community development director, really been tasked with kind of managing this project. But the consultant for the developer is here and would be happy to maybe talk with you a little bit more. And that would be appropriate. Public hearing, we typically give the applicant an opportunity to answer questions or respond to your concerns as well.
Okay.
So.
Any more?
Do you have specific questions?
Well, I think that'd be a great question for him is, in his experience, what is a good walkable distance for a block?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Michael, and you got the last name exactly right.
These guys made me say it, so, yeah.
It's a good question, and I think you're touching on all the exact points, is that it's a difficult quantity to place on a project this big that is going to address every single product type and every single topography type. And so I think, Daryl, your comment, 660 feet is kind of a typical that we've seen in Salt Lake quite a bit. I live in Sugar House, and there's a bunch of great homes there, and if you look on the Google Earth, there's long stretches of blocks that you probably would never realize are there. So I think it's a lot of things. It's the block length, it's the integration of open space, the trails that break up a block. You talked about access and getting people, to places and through places. I think another big one is limiting the number of cul-de-sacs. So and going back to Michael's comment about the connectivity, what we did was we took out a lot of the metrics so that these guys and the rest of the staff weren't doing a bunch of math, and made it more about a guiding principle that said, what is the intent here? And how do we, and so that's what we've taken out and then interjected those guiding principles that I think at the end of the day gives staff the comfort that, they can say, look, this isn't meeting those principles. and the MDA, has some teeth to hold to that. But at the same time, hopefully it gives the developer the opportunity to sometimes be more creative or come up with a product that maybe, needs a little bit longer block length, or maybe a shorter one. I would say that the longer block lengths are probably most conducive to single-family homes. What we see with townhomes is that the developer will either not do 1,000 feet of townhomes because they want to break that up, or they will have roads because they need the on-street parking. Or there's reasons that those block lengths are typically on the townhomes, and the higher density are a little bit shorter because of those components.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting because, in Harriman, we have townhomes with very long stretches of just townhomes that are.
A Mountain View.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah, there's a
exactly right.
couple of them.
But.
And
Yeah.
on-street parking issues, correct.
And I would say that's one where that plan came in, staff, engineering and planning staff would hopefully say, look, guys, this isn't meeting the guiding principles that you've committed to.
Right, and I think that, one of the things that is important that you mentioned is that, we have the flexibility that if they do need larger lots for topography or for a building type or for whatever, there is a path for them to do that and to, make that work. I think that, in my eyes, we'd like to limit it so that there's not a, huge number that you can do, but we're asking them, this is the area that we want to focus on. This is the size we want to focus on. If you want to go bigger, then we can go through the process of making those bigger through that process.
So these numbers were increased from the MDA that was with the county. Do you have an explanation of why they were increased so much?
Mostly just flexibility, but also as we went from so I wasn't involved in preparing the design standards the first time around. IBI out of downtown Salt Lake was. They also had a lot of smaller streets. And so we've worked with the engineering staff here to develop street standards that are, mostly in compliance and follow your city street standards, just kind of formatted for this project. So it was a little bit of that as well. When you start to get more big streets, more of those becomes much more difficult to kind of develop around. So I think Michael touched on it. It's a real, we're trying to find that window in the middle that makes everybody happy. And it's a good conversation for sure.
Well, I think it's really valuable to, as we move forward with this, that we encourage, this not just to be a neighborhood of just high-density houses, but, a place to go, a place that you can walk around, a place where you can get services, a place where you can park your car and go to multiple places and not have to drive from, one retail section at one block. And you're not going to walk 2,000 feet down the road to get to the next one. You're going to jump in your car and you're going to go over there.
Yeah.
Which increases parking spaces that are needed for the space. So I think that should be our focus, and we should really make this, a great place for people to go, and not just to leave from to go to downtown.
I have a question, and I don't know if you're the one to answer. It's 4.0, Parks, Trails, and Open Space. It says qualifying uses for open space, farm or agricultural lands, or institutional green space. What are you guys defining that as? Obviously farm or agricultural lands, but how do you define somebody who owns a farm as your open space? Am I a little off to think?
No, I read it the same way. Like I
Am I
read.
confused here?
No, it's really specific somewhere in here. Let me try to find it.
Yeah, I know there was some language in there to address an institutional, a USU ag.
And I don't know how.
I don't think that's in ours.
And I don't know if you use USU's space that they're using on their campus as open space, and it qualifies either. Both those seem like a big reach of trying to figure out a way to cut down on the open space that you have to provide to the city.
Well, I think we should go
Unless
through
I
this list
understand what
and
it
look
means
at that.
better.
Because they have this list of a bunch of stuff that I don't think we should consider as open space.
Oh, no. If it's not open space for, yeah.
Like,
I think there's a lot of those things on that list that are okay, but there's a lot that are like almost irrelevant.
So I guess we would probably, like, for me, I would want to know more details, like
Yeah,
what
I need to
qualifies as the
understand
nature
better.
preserve.
I agree with you.
And then, let's see, the farmer agricultural lands, these are all no's for me. Stormwater for parks, that's a no. Stormwater for development, stormwater
Even
in
landscape
common
around
areas.
private buildings.
Yeah, the landscape and private buildings,
I think you'll have a hard time getting that one out.
agricultural buildings,
Well, I
because
think-
that's the whole school right there. So is that gonna be our 20%, right?
I guess we're just trying to understand if 20% is what's given back to the city, what is actually given back to the city? I mean, we're not gonna allow all the kids to go play on somebody's farm.
Or in the cemetery.
Right, but it is, there are, and I would say that there are different types of open space, and you guys touched on that earlier. There's
Yeah,
active,
there are.
there's visual open space, you know, there's passive, but, and I'm not 100% sure, in your city code today, say for instance, the common area around private buildings, would that count as open space currently?
Yes. Yes, I believe
I'm
so.
not sure on that one.
Yes. So I
Have to
think
look
we're
at the
trying to
ordinance.
stay in line with,
Yeah, oh no, if
what-
you're in
what you
line,
have, right.
absolutely. I guess I'm just trying
You're
to
getting the
understand.
bread of a lot of-
I've never seen a farm or agricultural land allowed as open space for a developer. Because,
Or farmer ag, yeah.
yeah, that seems like, yeah,
and Napa
this-
Valley is a good.
Does that refer to the USU?
and maybe I just don't understand because,
Yeah, I think
because
that's
it does bother me a little bit thinking that USU can be their open space and the rest of it's just homes. And so it's like USU, we're gonna use what you have for agricultural and for, pretty much, because if I remember correctly, they wanted to be agricultural. Andrea, is that you?
Who's
I don't think phone's on.
Sorry.
Chase?
Chase, come on. You leave and that's what you do.
I know, I'm sorry, everyone. I had to run home for a family matter, but I
No-
tuned in on my way home.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
I just
fine.
wanted to address some of the discussions we've had about the USU property and other school property. So in other areas in the past, the city has given open space credit for Jordan School District property. We've discussed this with the developer, and again, this is pending, kind of in the draft phase still, but we've looked at not giving any credit for Jordan School District property. However, with USU property, we've put in kind of this provision that says, if we can work with USU to find a public use and find public access that makes sense, that serves an open space purpose that's agreeable to the city, and we can formalize that in an agreement with USU, we would consider using that as an open space credit.
And that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can give some insight on the farmer agricultural lens, though.
So that one we haven't talked a lot about, Eric, at least in the meetings I've been a part of. But I imagine that would, again, if that's privately owned land, what we'd look for is what is the benefit to the community, right? That's kind of our guiding principle, is what's the open space benefit to the community. And we have given open space credit in other areas in the city to privately owned parks, right? There are a lot of HOA parks that are privately owned, that don't have access to the full community, but do provide some benefit to at least a smaller surrounding area. So I'd imagine you would likely see some benefit like that to maybe one of these agricultural farms, but I'm probably not the right one to weigh in on that either. So
Are you talking about like Peterson's farm or something like that?
yeah,
Where you look at that as the agricultural land where open space is considered okay?
and that's like I said, not something we've discussed in detail. So that might be something you as a commission want to flush out.
Yeah.
Okay.
a
Yeah,
lot of
I'd just like to better understand it.
And I think a lot of that would fall under community garden type, activities. I think that, when you get into agricultural and farm lands, especially when it comes to universities, I think of MSU's, huge agricultural college that they have. And they have fields and fields of in the area, but that's not open to the public. That's all school-owned and school-run, and it's where they do all their tests and different things, so. I don't see that as being a public benefit as an open space.
Yeah, and that's one point that I brought up in this discussion with the developer is we've obviously got to find, if we're going to consider that, what that public use would be and what the access would be, right? Because we don't want a 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. public access. That's not ideal for what we're trying to accomplish. But if we can come up with a long-term, very accessible use, right? All we're saying is that's something we'll consider, right? And we would enter or consider entering into an agreement with USU for that purpose. So it does leave it very open-ended. And sorry, I'll add one more thing to your point as well, Forrest. If they do come in with 100 acres, a substantial portion of that is going to be, off limits to open space. It's going to be buildings, it's going to be walkways, it's going to be.
Well, even in their definition, it says agricultural fields, agricultural buildings, and small garden areas within agricultural use areas will count towards open space requirements. So it's saying buildings even are counting towards open space.
Right.
If they're agricultural use.
Which I guess if they
And the distinction I would make with USU only is that's subject to agreement between the city council and USU.
So we probably need to tighten up on the language if that's really the case.
And we can do that. Yep, I'll make sure to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think this entire area needs to probably have a once over and really look at it and go through it.
A few more asterisks down at the bottom.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a page of asterisks at the bottom.
Yeah, because and I think I agree, there could be ways where they could count if they were done correctly, but with how it's worded, it could be
It's too broad.
someone has a 50 acre or 100 acre park, or not park, but agricultural farm, and nobody ever gets to use it or see it or do anything, and it still counts with how it's defined right now.
Right.
And that's no benefit to the city at all. So we just need to have it defined a little bit better.
Can I add one more thing, Chris?
Absolutely.
So with regard to the Jordan School District property and the USU property, if we're not able to enter into an agreement with USU, what we have discussed is then taking that 100 acres from the overall requirement for the project. And we've done that in other areas with Jordan School District property where it's not been counted as open space. We've said, okay, if you have a 100 acre project and 10 acres of that is Jordan School District property, you now only owe 20% on the 90 acres instead of the 100 acres.
Yeah, so you're saying those 100 acres, if they're taken out, then they have 20% on the remaining property. And I agree with that.
Right.
I think that's more than fair.
That was kind of the windfall is, all right, if we don't come to an agreement, we're not going to penalize you and also make you give us 20% somewhere else.
No, and I agree. I think that's fair. All right.
And I would say along these same lines, and Chase, I know I brought this up, but we're gonna have to refine this, but I really wanna look at just right at 1.0, place types and land uses. I don't think certain uses should be permitted in commercial. I don't think you should allow police and fire, school. I know we can't limit school necessarily, but some of these other things we've talked about, I think we need to try to avoid putting in school, or I mean in commercial.
So I had some of those same concerns, Lauren. I would say maybe we need to compare the place types and land uses to our current code and see kind of what fits in with each of those.
What page is that on again?
That's on page 6.
414.
Oh, no.
I'm on 414.
414. I was on 412. Almost there. I gave up.
Because if you look at our code, we say no short-term in residential.
That's on 414, Destiny.
And they have that listed as permitted in everything except commercial and open space.
My only question is, how does this coincide with our city standards? And I think we need to evaluate it more from that perspective, or we need to change our city standards on top of it. If it's in line with our city standards, I think we probably don't have a lot of say, but if it's not in line, I think we do need to reevaluate these.
I agree. That's exactly what I'd like.
Well, I think to your point that, the commercial center is less of like a zoning, it's more of a form
Yeah.
that they're talking about. So, within a city center, it's more than reasonable to have libraries, police and fire, schools, assemblies, hospitals, and clinics, within a city center, right? But that's kind of how the form-based code differentiates from your typical use-based code that we use nowadays.
You could have a seat
know,
if you
it's so
want.
weird.
You want to sit down?
I've sat for quite a while
All right.
today, so I'm fine.
He's enjoying it.
Yeah, if you're okay with it.
No, absolutely.
But you're right, looking at what's existing in the code and then how these kind of encapsulate that.
Yeah.
That's really important.
My guess is they're probably pretty close, or maybe some that don't line up, and yeah, I guess we'll if they don't line up with what the city standard is, I would be curious what the reasoning is behind it, because I would guess that some of these they'd be like, we can just change it to line, and so we just need to have staff go over that with them. Does that make sense, Michael? Just making sure they line up. And then if they don't, why? If they have a good reason why they want it different.
And you could always change them from permitted to conditional.
Right.
What else we got, guys?
I personally would like to, this is draft, I'd like to see this. I know we're continuing this anyways, but I'd want more time now to look at it. I want to see this further discussion and.
Yeah, and this
Come
will be
back
part
at
of
this
our
point.
work session
Yeah.
in connection with the MDA.
I think a lot of this is going to change anyways. I'm not trying to cut this short, but I think a lot of this is going to change anyways, so. It's okay.
Is there any
But I am trying to cut it short.
blaring items that we would like to bring up in particular?
Are we going to allow for accessory uses, parking lots and parking structures? Because right now they just have a category of uses that are not permitted to serve as the principal use on a zoning lot. One of them is home occupation and the other is outdoor storage of goods.
Where are you at, Heather?
I'm on page 10, but it's one, let's see.
Got to be four
Place
something.
types and land uses
Oh, you're still in place types?
on
Okay.
11.
So you're still in one point something?
Oh, on
The
page 10 of that, so it's page
Yep.
419,
Yep.
418.
Sorry, I'm old school. I have it all printed out.
Nope, you're good. You're good.
418
I had to
there.
upgrade recently because these books are too big for me to print off anymore.
So say that again, Heather, now that we're there.
So for accessory uses, they could use, they could do a parking lot or a parking structure as an accessory use. How do you feel about that?
Parking structure.
Oh, man, she lost me.
No, it's item 7 and 8. I just gotta reread it. So I see in parking lot, they're not permitted on single family. A permitted building or open space type, and it's only.
What's your concern, Heather?
I mean, so would we allow that for principal use on a zoning lot? Would we allow a parking lot or a parking structure?
Principal use.
No one knows the answer.
It's reading then that
Well,
you
I
have
mean,
a lot.
Trying to think through
You
all
can
the
put wall-to-wall
scenarios.
pavement.
That's what I'm trying
Right.
to think through all the.
That was just something that the county had in there that I thought, I wonder why they have that in there specifically.
Let's look at that. Let's put that in a note to look at that.
I mean, in a commercial location, you could see a parking structure be a principal use or a parking lot. You typically would not see that in a more suburban environment or context. This
Yeah.
is,
The only time you see that is when they use
Yeah.
it as a RV storage or a recreational vehicle
Right.
storage.
so as an accessory use, it's saying that it's permitted. You're raising the question is, should that be allowed as a primary use, principal use? Yeah.
So would it be a principal use? I remember some townhomes by the old Doterra building. They have a RV recreational vehicle storage lot within their townhome community for those that live within their townhome community. Would that be the same thing that
I think we would
referencing, or
distinguish
no?
those as two different land uses. You know,
Okay.
the RV storage is one thing, and then a parking lot or
Parking
parking
structure
structure is
would be
something
another.
different.
Right.
Entire, yeah.
I wouldn't mind losing the, under the neighborhood, the parking structures, making that not a permissible with city staff approval, but
What if it's for multi-use?
well, would that fall under the neighborhood land use, or would that fall under, village center or town center or commercial center?
So Heather, you've raised the question. We will noodle on it, and we'll talk about it on our 21st. Yeah,
Okay.
Sounds good.
meeting on the 21st.
All right. Any other larger items before the 21st when we discuss this in greater depth, hopefully?
I just encourage all of you to look at the open space that was presented to the county because it is totally different than what we're getting presented with. So maybe just look over that and see if there's things that you would like to see incorporated into our standards, because I know that I have quite a few asks and I should probably just get those emailed over. So
Yeah, I wouldn't mind just maybe easy access, having an email with it to compare the difference of what they're attempting to change, and so I can look at it. So, all right,
Make a motion?
yeah, look for a motion, I'm assuming to continue, guys?
Horace is gonna make the motion.
Okay.
Continue.
I'd like to make a motion to continue, I guess it's request 4.2, recommendation to approve design standards and land development
Yep.
regulations
Without date?
Just
Without
motion
date.
continue without date. Okay,
Without date.
without date.
all right,
I'll second.
thank you,
Second.
Forrest. Oh,
Andrea got it.
Andrea tried to, I'll give it to Andrea.
Thank you.
If you were here, we would have seen you starting to talk. So we'll call for a vote. Heather,
yes.
Daryl,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
Andrea.
Yes.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you all.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And then our last item on the agenda for tonight is item 4.3. This is also on for a public hearing, is approval to amend Title 10 of the city ordinance pertaining to flag lots.
I just want to thank you again for being willing to come to an extra work meeting on that last topic. That it's needed. It's a huge project for this city, and I know that this commission and our city council care a great deal about making sure we do this right. So
We only
thanks
get to
for your
do it one
willingness.
time, so we
Yeah.
got to do it right.
Anyway, so we have had a few discussions, more than a few, on what to do with flag lot regulations. And I know that some of you have seen this presentation more than once. I can't remember if we've briefed Forrest and Daryl as newer members of our planning commission. And this is a public hearing, so I'm just going to go through this presentation. So we have, from time to time, received requests from residents in the city to develop a flag lot. I'm going to explain what that is. However, because of our limitations and regulations, oftentimes the answer is no. You don't fit our current ordinance. Okay, and we're going to talk about what that is and why there's an interest perhaps in broadening our regulations or allowing flag lots in more places than we currently allow. So this is just a typical flag lot illustration. It kind of looks like a flag. It has a mast or a pole. That's the driveway or a long access road, private road off of a street, and it accesses a rear lot. behind usually an existing home. This was a project that came to the Planning Commission a few months ago. It was a subdivision that was approved by the Planning Commission. Originally, they were proposing these 2 flag lots within that subdivision, as you can see highlighted in green and yellow. But we currently have an ordinance that says that when you're doing a subdivision, you can't have more than 2 lots in that subdivision where you have a flag lot. So we would just do a 2-lot subdivision, one of those being a flag lot. So in this case where we have multiple lots and they were showing 2 flag lots, we couldn't do that. So the developer ended up removing those 2 flag lots, and this is the plat that was reviewed by the Planning Commission and approved. By the way, the density that was allowed by the zone permitted this. So this was not exceeding the underlying base zone. It's just that it wouldn't allow 2 flag lots within that subdivision. This is another project that the City Planning Commission has reviewed a couple of years ago or a year ago. It was part of a rezone request. And this is going to be coming back to the Planning Commission again. The owner of this property still desires to create 4 lots on this property. Originally, they were trying to get 5 in a rezone. The rezone failed. Potentially, if they could do essentially 4 lots here, but along with that, you'd get 4 separate drive approaches. If we allowed a flag lot to have more than 1 home accessed by a single flag lot, we could consolidate those drive approaches, perhaps all 4 into 1 even, where they're sharing a single access point. But again, we currently would not allow that to happen under our flag lot ordinance. Now, I had been showing a different map as part of our street functional classification map, and I didn't realize at the time that that map was actually current conditions or existing conditions. This is the map that is showing where we're trying to go in the future with improvements, and it breaks down the major and minor collector streets. Where we typically find a request for flag lots that we don't currently allow is what we call a minor collector. And the proposed amendment that is in your packet tonight is saying under which conditions might the city consider a flag lot on a minor collector. Currently, we don't allow them on an arterial or a collector of any size, whether it's major or minor.
Do you have some,
please.
and maybe it'll be a question in a minute that you would already answer, but do you have some examples other than, like you showed those 2, but are there examples where, depending on how this is adjusted, there may be a completely new feel for a neighborhood because all of a sudden now we have a half dozen or a dozen different lots that could be flag lots?
I don't have anything in this presentation. So
I'm just curious if, depending on how we look at this, if changing it will benefit maybe those 1 or 2 that are seeking this, but then will hurt communities of neighborhoods because now all of a sudden it allows a dozen more houses to completely start implementing it and change the feel of a neighborhood where everybody had certain size lots, and now all of a sudden it's like the feel changes, I guess.
Yeah, and there are pros and cons to these policies, right? If we are more restrictive on flag lot development, probably what that signals to the market is what we want is consolidation. We want to encourage people to acquire property and pull them together into some type of redevelopment package where you can actually build a traditional street. That typically requires, we're going to do more demolition work in order to do that.
Typically gets more houses too, I'm guessing.
Flag lots tend to be a little more, it's an infill tool where you try and keep what you've already got and maybe fit in a home into a place where there's vacant or underused property. So it depends on what our policy or objectives are as a city. Do we want kind of more careful, kind of increasing of lots in the city where we're trying to preserve existing fabric? Or would we rather see over time, let's talk about maybe demolition and complete, reconstruction of a property potentially?
They seem to be, would lend themselves to safety issues. Just access for emergency vehicles, And who maintains the flag lots? Is
It's
it-
private, it's private.
How
It's
would
a
this-
really common development tool. I mean, cities use them all over the place, and we have too. I mean, we obviously have a flag lot regulation right now. But we tend to be a little more restrictive than I think our neighboring cities around us.
How would it differ safety-wise than having a driveway?
My 16-year-old boy is parked in the flag lot and the house catches on fire. You don't have the widths of a standard street to get emergency vehicles in and out.
Right, but the purpose of a flag lot is not to create a new street. The purpose of a flag lot is to allow access to another part of the
This is
lot.
to protect the public, safety and health.
Right, which is
I don't know if
at
a
the
flag
street
lot
level, right?
accomplishes that.
Because there's nothing in our code that says your driveway can't be, you know, squirrely,
Yeah.
weird, that emergency services can't go down.
Yeah.
So saying that, you know, creating a flag lot creates more of a security, there's no code that says that driveways can't be, you know,
12 feet wide or.
8 feet
yeah,
wide or,
yeah.
you know, or just 2 dirt tracks.
Well, there are codes that limit lengths and limit grade.
Ours currently does. It limits the length,
The hammerheads,
the
I
flag lot.
perceive, I guess the fire marshal's okay with all that.
Yeah.
You can turn around a vehicle.
Right, but that's at the street level, not at the
Yeah.
private.
Yeah,
property
if I
level.
remember correctly, it's 300 feet or something like that with the flag lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it cannot exceed 300 feet.
I think they should be employed, but in limited conditions.
Judiciously.
I believe it'll take away from, I move into a neighborhood that has half-acre lots, and even though it's zoned for a higher density, you put in a couple flags and it kind of strips it from that identity.
Yeah.
I have worked for communities that have been restrictive, and I've worked for communities where it's been permissive. And it really, in my mind, it really comes down to what is a reflection of the community values. And to me, the biggest issue is, do you want to have some type of infill tool that potentially allows property owners to essentially keep what they have? Or would you rather, over time, as these larger lots end up having backyards that sit vacant and really nobody does anything with them, because that's just not how we live these days? Would you rather see somebody come in and buy up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 homes and tear that out and redevelop it? I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No.
I'm just saying, if you have a really narrow flag lot ordinance, that's what you're signaling to property owners and developers in the community is, we're not going to be doing incremental infill. Over time, you're going to have to figure out how to buy up properties and tear them down and rebuild. And that's okay. I mean, that could be our desire as a community.
I mean, for me personally, and this is a whole different subject, but the accessory living units is of more interest on these big lots than these flag lots to me. They just are.
Yeah.
So.
So I'll just continue on with this. One of the issues that we have right now is the Planning Commission does not have any discretion when it comes to our fencing regulation. We require the flag lot to be fully fenced, specifically with a 6-foot tall vinyl fence. And I made a comment here, it seemed like this resonated with, well, what happens when somebody already has part of the property fenced with something like this precast fence? Our ordinance would say that that fence has to be removed in favor of a vinyl fence for the flag lot. So the draft that's before you tonight would say that the commission would have the authority to modify that standard as needed.
Yeah.
So here are reasons for and against this flag lot ordinance. 4 is it does improve city revenues, although very incrementally, in that it increases property taxes essentially. It increases population, which again creates indirect revenue sources for the city. We do receive some monies allocated based on our population. It increases private property value through development potential. You imagine if you suddenly had the ability to create a buildable lot out of your property, you know you've instantly, that's, you know, 5 figures easily, right? For having that, so it does mean something to people who have that ability. And as I said, it does foster preservation of encouraging or existing built environment, of existing structures. And if you're thinking about protecting the environment and sustainability, there's a lot of embodied energy in a structure. And if you were just tearing that down and hauling it to the landfill in a redevelopment proposal, that is actually not the most sustainable thing to do. If you can figure out a way to reuse and keep what you have, adapt, reuse, recycle, right? That's what a flag lot policy kind of supports, if that's something that we care about as a community. Against, like I said, it discourages property accumulation. I've worked for communities that have said, we don't like the development pattern that flag lots create. We would much rather have homes front on a regular street. And we know that in order to get that, that means we're going to encourage development over time to accumulate and, you know, demolish and redevelop. Again, that can be a value of this community. In allowing a flag lot, you're putting a home in a place that historically there wasn't a home. And it changes that context. And maybe we're getting rid of agricultural use or some type of a historic use on private property. And it does have a potential impact on privacy. You know, if you always thought, oh, I'm living next door to this large lot, there'll never be a home back there, and now we're introducing a flag lot that legislation that allows that home to be built. You know, people think, oh, that causes me some concern.
So right when I got on 7 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it's been now, I thought it was interesting. We would see these flag lots every month, regularly.
Right.
I mean, it was like all the time we saw them. And for every person that brought in wanting to have a flag lot, we usually had 2 or 3 that did not want them to have a flag lot. It was a huge controversial thing. Neighbors hated the idea of somebody putting a flag lot next to their house. I mean, it was very, that's what stemmed the flag lot ordinance that occurred. I'm not saying the ordinance is exactly how it should be, but it seemed to actually become at least for what we saw, a lot greater against having it from a city perspective, from neighbor perspective, from overall the feel of
I think
areas.
In 3.5 years I've been here, Chris, I think, have we done just a couple?
Yeah.
I think there's just been a few flag
The
lots
first
since
couple
I've been here.
years, we saw them all the time.
All the time.
And
that's what I've been told.
So
Yeah.
that's there's a lot fewer because it seems like, and it's funny, when they do come in, we don't usually get complaints now.
Yeah.
With what's in place, they're like, oh, you have a privacy fence? I don't have to worry about it. Oh, I got this.
Again, that speaks to the fact that our ordinance currently is somewhat restrictive. We're not seeing requests because
and we're not seeing
often
complaints
saying
either
it doesn't meet the standards.
when somebody
you can't
does
do
come
it.
in wanting one.
Yeah.
And so it's been both ways, though, is what I'm trying to state. So I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be upgraded and changed and allow more in different places, because you gave some good examples, but it definitely has served a purpose of having less disgruntled citizens.
Yeah, and I put this bullet point on here: increased vehicular traffic congestion and emissions, fairly minor for the overall in the system. And even if we don't allow flag lots, again, if there's redevelopment, there's always going to be an increase in more cars and more congestion and emissions in our community. Put together this table, just kind of comparing ourselves with other cities. Like I said, my assessment of these other standards is that we generally are more restrictive than our neighbors. So our current ordinance was adopted in 2017, and that was an amendment. We had an flag lot ordinance before that, but that's when it was amended. It was our intent to increase restrictions on flag lot development, and as Chris mentioned, that has obviously happened, right? We've restricted it and reduced it. We've added a number of new standards in that draft. So our purpose in trying to amend the current ordinance is to clarify the intent and the language of the existing city code. Allow flag lot on a minor collector street with certain conditions. So not just any minor collector street, there would be some standards, and we can talk about what those standards are. Allowing more than one flag lot in a subdivision, like the example I showed earlier, that, you know, we would not limit a flag lot to just simply a 2-lot subdivision. Allows planning commission the opportunity to have flexibility with fencing. So here's some of that clarifying language. A lot in, it used to say just a residential zone, but clearly we've been doing flag lots in agricultural zones too. So I just clarified that and just added this language about lot frontage requirement for the zone, not just lot frontage. Under the standard section, this is where we're addressing the minor collector street. So the staff portion or the mast portion of a flag lot shall front on and be contiguous to a dedicated local public street, that's current code, or minor collector street when located at least 50 feet from any street intersection and a minimum of 5 feet from an adjacent driveway. So that's a reflection of current engineering standards of how close can you put a driveway to an intersection, and it's 50 feet. How close can you put a driveway adjacent to another driveway? It's 5 feet. Now I asked our transportation engineer today, I said, well, what about how close could you put an intersection to another intersection? And that separation has to be a minimum of 150 feet on a minor collector street. So if the commission felt like 50 feet was too close to the intersection, that may be another standard we could look at instead, is saying that a flag lot could not be closer than 150 feet from any street intersection, which would be the same for any other street intersection that would be introduced on a minor collector street. We also talked internally with our engineering department about whether or not 20 feet wide for the staff portion is sufficient. And as you can see, we're proposing that we widen that from 20 feet to 25 feet. And that's primarily because we have had problems with having the 20-foot wide driveway, but we don't, and it's a 20-foot wide staff or mast, but we don't have room for utilities. And even have had problems like fitting in, even building the required fence along that 20-foot wide road. So the idea is, okay, let's widen that to 25 feet. That'll give us enough room for the drivable surface, the flare of the drive approach, and also placing the utilities. So like the water meter at the street is not in the driveway, but is actually next to the driveway apron or the flared driveway. And then if it's a staff that is greater than 150 feet, we would say that it could be increased even further if that's the recommendation of the city engineer and the fire marshal and approved by the planning commission. The maximum length of the staff portion of a flag lot. Again, it just said the maximum length of a flag lot, but clearly it's meaning the staff portion, not just the overall flag lot, is 220 feet. So we just clarified that. And this next one is just, when we say bermings, we are meaning landscape berms, and so I just changed that language. And we also included fencing. We want to make sure there's adequate provisions and room to have all of these features within that area. A flag lot should not be created from an illegally divided lot or parcel. I just thought that we can get rid of that 2-lot language and just maintain kind of the rest of that standard. Staff, well, there's an indication in here about where is the front yard. And I think typically the original language has worked okay. It did say by staff on a case-by-case basis, when we just clarifying, maybe that could be by the planning director, or we could put that community development director or designee. So again, just clarifying language as to how that is processed. This is addressing the fence, that instead of vinyl, we could just say privacy fence. and that the planning commission has the ability to modify that. For example, there has been some requests for, what if I have an existing hedge? What if I have a nice, solid 6-foot tall green hedge and it's beautiful and everything? Are you saying that in order to do a flag lot, I got to tear down my hedge and put up a vinyl fence instead when the hedge is sufficient?
Absolutely.
So this is where the commission would have some flexibility and not, necessarily require that fence. So we've been talking about different options. You've seen this list before, maybe what we should do and what we shouldn't do. We talked about, should we have more than one home accessed from a single flag lot? Other communities do. But that hasn't resonated, it seems like, with any of our commissioners or council members. So as you saw in the draft amendment, we did not include that.
And you had a map at the beginning of the minor collectors, right? Streets.
Yeah.
I just wanted to have a,
You want me to go back to,
when you're done.
okay.
I just want to look at it.
So we're having a public hearing tonight. We've not had a public hearing on the flag lot draft before. As you know, you can continue this item and give me further direction, or you can forward a recommendation, either positive or negative, or with conditions to the council for final review and decision. We've been doing this dance for a long time, and we've got other things to do. So if you feel inclined to make a motion and forward this to the council, but if you feel like it's not ready yet and you're just not feeling the love, then that's okay.
Well, I think we didn't address, the couple things we didn't address was how many off a flag lot.
Right, so it's still
Leave it at
one.
or not.
So I didn't change that because it didn't seem like anybody was interested in making that change.
Yeah. So I just want to see the minor collector roads again.
Okay. I will say the minor collector standard, or the ability to not have a flag lot on a collector street, that's probably been the biggest reason why we've been saying no to people. The fencing has been problematic, and the width of the driveway, not having enough room to fit everything in, that's why we widened it to 25 feet. I think you can see that even if you're not interested in broadening the ordinance by allowing flag lots on collector streets, there are other parts of this amendment, I think, that are still good.
Yeah.
Yeah, from a practical point of view.
No, I think a lot of it is.
I like it.
I am curious, though, just the minors. I want to remember that. I know that's at the beginning almost.
Yeah, I'm going, there you go.
I'd
No-
like it to go to 150.
No, didn't you have a picture of all the minors, collectors?
Oh, you want to see
Yeah.
that map? Sorry,
Yeah,
I
I'm
thought
ju-
you said you wanted to see
I just
the
wanted a
language of the amendment.
reminder of
Yeah,
where we're talking about,
yeah.
what would sort of fall in line with this, what
Oh,
location.
there we go.
You're too quick now, and it's the light blue. Is that, let me see, example, is that 6,000, for instance? The one right in the middle, in between the green and red,
Yes.
that's 6,000? Yep. I'm trying to see what that other one is, the light blue one up at the top right. Where is that? Oh, that's Miller Crossing
Miller
Road,
Crossing Road.
which nothing's applicable there.
No, I don't think there's
That I
very
can
little
think
that,
of. So 6,000 as it goes will be applicable, which goes up to Rosecrest. There may be some applicable stuff along there. I'm assuming the one on the far left will be applicable, and most of the ones going up, I think that's Rose Canyon. Heather, does that look right on the bottom section? Am I missing where I'm at? Ooh, we got a red pin. I'm trying to think, the blue that goes right in the middle.
Oh, he's talking up here.
Yeah, so there's that one, and then the one that's farther up. I'm trying to think where these are, some of where they're located, of which ones actually will have some options. And which ones I think are really not gonna be too much to think about. But 6,000 will definitely, all the way up to Rosecrest, there will be homes somewhere along there that does it.
and I'm okay. We've allowed a couple, so I think we're.
Yeah, in the past there has been some. Okay.
Mike, back to the privacy fence.
Mhm.
You've stripped out vinyl. I'm okay with that. But in your mind, what's a privacy fence? 6-foot chain link with?
It still has to meet
No,
city standards.
solid. It
Yeah,
has
still
to be
meet city
visually opaque.
standards.
Yeah, and we still have fencing standards in the city. So you can't do chain link with slats. That's not,
Or
that's a
wood.
prohibited
We don't
one.
allow
Yeah.
wood either. All right, that answered mine. I just needed to get a visual of what roads I thought would be affected by this. All right, we do have to open a public
Yeah,
hearing
public
tonight, though,
hearing.
Michael.
Jackson came just to comment on.
We will now open the public hearing for item 4.3. And if Jackson has anything to say, he can too.
Oh, I thought he was, thought Jonathan was coming out.
And we didn't have anything windy electronic. Well, I think we'll close the public hearing. Oh. Is there a reason why not to?
No. No.
An electronic public comment on this. And it was not included in your packet. You mind just giving me 1 minute to
Yeah,
see?
we'll leave it
that I can
open
read it?
until you can double check that.
Are you interested? Okay. Do you want me to take just a minute, take a
Let's
look at
take
that?
If we got a public comment, probably should hear it. Because we have been taking them electronically. That hasn't changed, has it?
What's that?
That we're still taking them electronically.
I think it's great.
Yep, I think we should.
I mean, even,
Yeah.
we still don't get very many, but
No, but they seem to be insightful. They're good.
definitely.
Okay.
I thought we might be here till midnight. We're doing good, guys.
Are we?
When I saw 500 pages, I thought it was a midnight meeting.
Oh, I was mistaken.
Nothing? Okay. Then I will close the public hearing at this time, and I'll turn to the Planning Commission for additional comments and a motion. And this is a recommendation to the City Council.
My only thing on it was that distance from the intersection.
The 220 feet?
Yeah, the 50 feet. They've got it 50.
So 50 feet is a driveway separation from an intersection,
And that's intersection with light or any intersection?
just on a minor collector street. That's the standard, whether it's lit or not, doesn't matter.
So do we need to, do you think 50 is okay in there? I'd like to see it more.
So, that's why I asked the question of the transportation engineer, Bryce, is just saying, what's kind of the next metric?
We're adding,
50
well,
feet
one
is too
car?
close.
We're adding one car at 50 feet because, or
Right.
technically.
I don't even think we need to go to 150, but
And the nice thing about, at least one nice thing about Flag Lot Sterile is that typically that movement is you're heading out, you're driving face forward, right? When you're exiting your lot. You're typically not backing out that flag lot like you do on a typical driveway.
Well, if it's also a flag lot, there already is a driveway right next to it that's been doing it too. And then
Possibly.
it's possibly
That's
one
my-
car more, so
if
I'm
you
not
go
as
across the street
concerned.
from each other, I don't know.
I'm not as concerned with, I think 50 foot seems sort of reasonable.
But that's the current standard, right? You have to be 50 feet from
Yeah.
the driveway to the intersection anyways.
Yeah.
It's not associated with the flag lot ordinance itself.
Right.
We didn't have any, again, where's Jonathan? When we do a flag lot, do we apply that standard to flag lot, the location of the actual driveway? Would we already require 50 feet and I'm just like putting it in the code?
You're doing right. You're doing it right, Mike. So we would assume and consider that drive approach for that staff as a driveway and not as an intersection. But to Mike's point, he was just trying to figure out what would that next measure be from a 50, what would be another measure. So we're kind of reaching out there.
Something that would justify, because the question that we were getting from the council at least is, what are we trying to prevent, what are we trying to avoid in not having flag lots on collector streets, right? And so I'm thinking, well, we're probably trying to avoid kind of negative traffic patterns or opportunities for collisions or, slowing traffic. And
Yeah,
so
you're right, Mike.
Yeah.
We would, when we see that drive approach, we would see that as any type of a drive approach, whether it's typical lot, flag lot, so we would apply it anyway. But you're right, Mike.
Okay.
I think by making it 25 foot, even if it's lined with fences, your sight distance may be slightly impaired, but it'd still be okay. Where a narrower road lined with fences acts like a canyon and the cars coming down the driveway can't see
Yeah.
the cross traffic.
Now, there is a front yard maximum height for
3 feet.
fencing, and so once that privacy fence comes into the front yard setback, it would drop down to 3 feet.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the lot creating the flag, do they have to maintain setbacks?
Yes,
from the-
yeah.
from
When
the
you
new-
do a flag lot, you're doing a subdivision. And so when you're introducing those new parcel lines, you can't put a home into non-conformance. So all the setbacks would still have to comply, and all the area, the minimum area requirements would also still have to comply. In fact, oftentimes the flag lot area itself is larger than what the zone may require. So the flag lot ends up being bigger.
So other than, Chris's story of neighbors, adjoiners who have some heartburn with it, I think with the increased width, I may not like them, but I don't see anything wrong with what staff has proposed.
Well, previously, they could have dirt, they had no fence. There was a lot of issues before. So a lot of those have been resolved, and yeah. It's still gonna cause some problems just because it'll change the feel of neighborhoods. So, I mean, that will occur and we will hear it. So, it's just probably not that often.
You will, if the council approves an amendment, if you forward a positive recommendation and they approve something that allows for flag lots on minor collectors, I'm sure we will see some applications for that.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Questions? Discussion? Lauren wants to make a motion, it sounds like. All right, we'll look for the planning commission to make a motion on this item. Remember, it's just a recommendation to city council.
I don't know what I want yet.
You guys are probably a little surprised. This is actually pretty negatively impacts neighbors.
It really
It's a
does.
huge controversial topic that occurs
But we
when
need
they come
to-
in on a regular
We
basis.
need to get that all out tonight so that they can quit working on this. So if we're against it, let's,
And I've
Let
tried to
them know.
give you cover. I mean, really, honestly.
It really is.
This is really just a reflection of what do we value as a community. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong in saying we value this or we value this. And I've tried to outline how you might justify which value you think is the greater value, what reflects who we are.
I personally value or believe that allowing these in too many neighborhoods changes the dynamics of it too much. I think there are exceptions, but you showed us the exception really with the larger that wants to make it a little neighborhood, almost like a cul-de-sac feel, to be honest. I mean, that's almost the exception. What really is going to happen is it's going to be a single home here that all of a sudden has a flag lot in the back, and then a single home here that all of a sudden has a flag lot in the back, and a single home here that all of a sudden has a flag lot in the back, and then you're going to have neighbors not too happy, and eventually they'll just accept it. And so it's a question of, is that what we're accepting?
Well, I can't argue the technical end. I think staff did a fine job of making it safe. Even if my 16-year-old boy parks on the side, there's still room to get a vehicle around it at 25 feet. But my heart tells me that it lessens the value of my neighborhood. I don't have anything to base that on, but I don't care for them.
May I suggest, it seems like the issue is the collector street, whether or not we allow it on a collector street. I think everything else was really just a
Yes.
cleanup.
Yes.
you know, the ability to have the fencing, the language, and then the 25-foot wide
And to be honest,
mast, so.
if you were to come back to me and say there is 30 homes on these collector roads that potentially can do this, it might change the perspective, unless you said, except for this neighborhood, every one of them could. And then you'd say, oh, so if 3 of the neighbors did it, it would change the feel of the entire neighborhood because they're all this size, and then all of a sudden they're cutting them all in half. And so I guess, because we had a neighborhood a couple years back, and that's where a lot of this stemmed from.
So
So
are we
if-
talking minor collectors or less, like a subdivision road as opposed to a collector?
Well, I think we're talking about just allowing it
Yeah,
on minor
it's already on
collectors.
local roads.
Yeah.
The next step up from a local road in our transportation
So local
hierarchy
roads
is
up
minor
to
collectors.
these-
Up to minor collector.
So you could
So
have
it's just the light blue. The light blue would be the new add-on.
So all the areas that aren't colored, they're already allowed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
There's still a lot of areas that it's allowed.
right.
I mean, we're just adding new areas now. We're adding,
We're not changing a whole lot, we're just adding a few more roads.
we're adding
that
the
are
road
allowed.
that goes to the high school and the middle school and, yes, we're adding some of those types of roads.
I'm a big fan of being able to infill and give a variety, because this gives you options, and it gives people who have these larger lots options.
So again, this would not take away the tool that we already have,
Right.
okay? It just possibly broadens it on minor collectors,
Select
but
roads, right.
you could forward a positive recommendation except for amending standard number 1.
I think that's where I'm at.
Okay. So we'd fix some of the problems, but not really broaden it onto new streets in our city, basically.
And I think most of it is just verbiage on fixing it past this. This is the big one.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 50 feet is an ample spread.
But what it's saying here is we're allowing it on minor collectors. And I think what Lauren's saying is, I'm not sure I want it on minor collectors, but all the rest of the language I'm okay with.
So this would be basically,
Yeah, so he's pretty much saying, well, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth.
please do. Because that would, we just have to strike that, because if we do, if we remove the minor collector, this would be,
No changes to standard number 1.
Changes
If
to
you don't
standard.
want to introduce it on minor collector streets,
that's where I'm
right?
at. Anybody else? Anybody else agree, disagree?
Yeah, I agree, Lauren, with you.
So what are your,
Council's, oh, go ahead.
sorry, what are your guys' thoughts on number 5 and number 10? So number 5, was this one that Adam was like adamant about?
Yes.
Yeah.
So can you explain that, Chris?
A flag lot shall not be created as part of a subdivision where there are more than 2 lots in the subdivision. Well,
So I guess why are we changing that number 5? Was it because
So
of
for the example like I
procedures?
shared with you,
Huh?
now, Bryn had explained it to me that what we were trying to achieve is that if a subdivision had already been platted,
yeah. That you
somebody
can't
couldn't
make,
come back in and plat another flag lot.
yeah, you can't do.
But that's not what that language, the
Yeah.
plain reading
Yeah,
of
so
that
what they
language
were,
doesn't say
yeah.
that.
That
Yeah,
basically
that sounds
says any
right.
subdivision, you can't have a flag lot.
But is it
Well,
meeting its intent if we
no.
make this change?
So,
That's kind of what it is.
and I'll try to, because Adam's been talking about this forever. So more or less, one of the major concerns was in a subdivision, it creates a feel of homes, community, and what it is. Now, all of a sudden, that subdivision has an option of allowing a bunch of flag lots in it. And now neighbors and other individuals are saying, that's not what I bought into, and you're changing what I bought. And so a big push that came from someone on this commission over the years has been, if it's a subdivision and it was designed a certain way, we should not allow them to continue to add flag lots into it, especially when that wasn't the intent. And that's sort of what the gist of what that was trying to do initially.
My concern with that, and I've talked about this with our city attorney, is let's say a subdivision was done, not a MDA or plan development or whatever, you know, it's just a regular subdivision, local streets, and let's say somebody just, they wanted to do 1 acre lots in an area that would allow 1/4 acre lots. That's just the pattern of development that they wanted to have, and it's a local street. And then somebody comes in later and says, I want to do a flag lot. If we have an ordinance that says, nope, you've platted that property once, even though the ordinance says you can, we're not going to let you. Chase has said that is something we would lose
Which I agree
every
with
time.
you. There's a balance of this that has to occur because I think, I totally agree with you that that's not how it should be, but I do also, I understand where Adam was coming from, because it will cause individuals to say, I don't want to live by someone, I bought something and now you've changed it without my consent almost.
But think about this, though. If we're trying to suggest that once we develop something, we're finished and it should never, ever, ever, ever change, that is not a healthy position for a city to take.
But I don't think from the city we should, but typically how that happens is through HOAs, saying, no, you can't do anything else in here. This is the community, you're done. And we're just saying from a city, we're not gonna say you're done. Is what you're saying. So, and the question is, do we write something to where if it's plotted and it's planned community and this is how it is, then it's done? Or do we say, no, you can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't matter how it affects the neighbors. Even though they all bought the same one.
I don't know how I feel about that, because it does, it changes the feel.
Yes, very much so. It makes an area feel completely different.
It changes the feel, but the city is not in the position to act as an HOA.
Well, and I don't think we're trying to, but at some point, these ordinances are written to protect individuals. Are we protecting them or are we limiting their rights is the question.
Well, and then, it just goes back to whose rights,
Balance.
are you?
And that's the balance that's so hard to do. That's the balance, and I don't have an answer either way for you.
It sounds like legally, this was the advice kind of from, so 5's almost illegal, right? Michael, you're almost saying that's illegal advice from Chase in a way.
The way that the current ordinance reads and the way we've been applying it, I don't think is illegal. You're saying that, okay, if you're doing a 10-lot subdivision and you want to do 1 flag lot, we won't let you do that. But the way around that is do 2 subdivisions. And that's what you're going to see on 139th South, the one that I told you where the guy's going to come back and do 4 lots. Because of that ordinance right there, he's just going to simply do 2 subdivisions. And we can't say no. There's a workaround.
Yep.
It's just extra work and extra cost on his part, but he can do it.
I'm not sure if, I'm okay either way with that one, to be honest.
Okay, how it's changed.
I do agree that the minor collector roads are not something we need to have flag lots on at this time.
What was the other one you had, Heather, 10?
Number
So I
10.
agree with 1, not being changed.
And I didn't have any changes on that one. Did I misunderstand you, Heather?
Did you have a change
Oh,
recommended
no,
on that?
sorry, we're good on that.
Okay.
I read that wrong.
Okay, we ready? Good?
Yeah, it's really just the minor collector road that's in question.
And
with-
the city council is going to get the final word anyway.
Yeah, it's a recommendation.
It's always nice to blame them.
I would be curious to hear what they come back with afterwards, though. Well, I'm looking for motion of
I'm just
a
trying to think how
recommendation
to-
of some sort.
So really, we just have to strike the changes in 1. That's where I'm at, just changing 1.
If that's what you want, yeah.
No amendments to standard number 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of item 4.3, request to amend Title 10 of the city ordinance pertaining to flag lots with the exception of removing the changes to standard number 1.
Motion made by Lauren.
Second.
And we have a second by Forrest, and we'll call for a vote. Forrest?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Heather,
No.
and Andrea.
No.
That is approved with a vote of 3-2.
Commissioner Berber, may I, council often is interested in knowing why commissioners vote
Yes.
no.
Heather
Would-
and
Would
Andrea.
either one of you care to express your
Well,
position?
both of you would be great if you want to, but if you don't, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it was the recommendation number 5. And I just worry about changing the feel of the community.
Okay.
That's also my same, same feelings. Thanks, Heather.
I think it's fair. I mean, that gives council,
Okay.
I think that was a concern for us too, so I think that's.
Yeah, so
Done.
no one on this body
I'm
had
not.
question of number 1. It's number 5 that was in question. Okay?
Good job.
All right, so are there any additional comments that need to be brought up at this time by the Planning Commission?
I have one for staff. I was out in the neighborhood this past week. Came across a couple of residents that are across from Tuscany Park, on the north side of Tuscany Park. There's some baseball fields there. There's one stretch, you come around, if you're coming from the north, you come around that corner there. The street's a little narrower, right there as you come around the corner. And then it widens as you get, there's a parking lot there, and then it widens. You could tell it was developed at different times. The baseball players are tending to park along the roadway right there. Even though the parking lot, I was there, and the baseball game's going on, there's nobody in the parking lot, which is literally 50 yards, 20 yards down. Nobody's in the parking lot, but they're parked along that roadway to where residents can't even back out at all. From 3 of those residents right there, all 3 brought that up. They wouldn't mind seeing just maybe some red curbing there, some no parking there, to push them into the parking lot. That was just something that.
Cool. So really just, I'm just going to explain the process for requests like that, if that's okay.
Yes, 'cause I didn't know what to tell them, so.
So what we'll do is, what I would like to do, we have a traffic committee that fields these kind of questions. And so we'll take that request, and if the person who brought it up would like to have their information on there, we can. Otherwise, we can put your name on it. We're totally good either way. And then we go through it, we give a response, and then we give we decide on how to take action, and then we respond back to that applicant. So we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
And maybe offline, I think I know what you're saying.
Okay.
I know which parking lot you're talking about, but I want to confirm that with you
Okay.
offline.
Absolutely. I
if
just
that's
thought I'd
okay.
bring it up now. I think that's.
Okay. Anything else? Andrea? I think she's good.
So I have one quick thing. Is Andrea going to talk?
Andrea, do you have something?
I just was wondering on the schedule, so are we meeting the 18th instead of the 19th?
We're talking
So
about in
we
August.
offered, well, we polled the planning commission in the event that the MDA and design standards do not receive a recommendation from the planning commission on August 5th, 4th, 5th.
There's a 5th. Yeah.
And if that is tabled or continued, that's when our city attorney is asked for, is there a possibility of having a special meeting on the 18th? So right now, we're not expecting that, but we'll see what the direction is from the planning commission. The extra meeting we talked about in the work session was the 21st of this month, July 21st on Wednesday, right? A work session. And do we want to start that at 5:30, we said?
5:30, yep.
And
I
we'll
was gonna
provide
announce- I
a
was gonna
dinner?
announce that, so 5:30.
And we'll provide a dinner.
Okay. Heather?
Okay, so we've kind of talked a little bit about our volunteer group. And today Michael called me and said, hey, I will pay for a little free library. So he's going to donate that to our group to set up. So
It's on its way.
it's on its way. So I just wanted to thank him for that. And then also
Is that like
maybe
an Amazon purchase? Oh, that's too bad.
maybe what we can do is kind of just have more discussion some other time about, I would love to see one of each of these little libraries in each district.
Be awesome.
So
Be fun.
I'll start getting community donations for books and then possibly donations for more of the little libraries.
So is the commission familiar with how these little libraries work?
There's one over in Copper Creek.
Okay. So they get registered, the homeowner kind of is like a little librarian and stocks and it's just free. You can take them, you don't have to return them if you don't want. A lot of people will donate books and just put books in. It's just an opportunity to foster community. And it's just one small thing that, we can do. And anyway, thank you, Heather, for
Well, thank you. Thank
Very
you
cool.
for being committed to our community and providing those kind of things. So I appreciate that.
And I would say along those same lines, Michael, I appreciate that. Heather also, for those of you, I don't know if everybody in this group is on Facebook, but Heather's also started a Facebook group called Harriman Community Service Project. So if you're not on Facebook, you got kids, that's where she's kind of pushing some.
So that was all inspired though by all of you. So if you are on Facebook, I'll add you guys as admins to it. So
We've already done a couple cleanups.
Yeah.
Which I think we got bigger plans. I think it's awesome.
Always appreciate those willing to give back to the community. All right, guys. Item 6 is future meetings. We will have a meeting on July 21st, 2021. As of right now, it looks like it's 5:30. That's the Planning Commission meeting that was initially unscheduled, which has now been scheduled. It will be going over item, that's 4.2 again, in further detail. That was on the agenda tonight. Is there going to be additional items on that, Michael, do you think, or just that one mainly?
on our special, no, it'll just be the MDA and the design
Sounds good.
standards. Yeah.
Then Thursday, August 5th, Planning Commission has another meeting. Wednesday, August 11th, City Council meeting. And then the Thursday, August 19th meeting has been canceled at this time. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
What are you doing? I'm digging for that one. I'm looking for that one. Yeah, actually, you took that one.